오픈을 한 건가요?
젠지!
신나요.
감정 조절이 안 돼요, 룰러!
대박이에요! 라이프! 젠지입니다! 이거 초반에 T1이었거든요. 기억이 안 날 정도입니다, 지금의 T1은. 젠지가!
캐리.
포지가 전멸을!
아이, 무슨 거냐요! 와, 진짜!
혼자 위로 페이커가 무겁고요. 다 닦입니다. 다 끝납니다.
T1 간다, 플레이오프 2라운드로! Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the 2021 LCK Spring Playoffs, presented, of course, by Uri Bank. I'm Atlas, joined by Wolf here for our second semi-final. T1 versus Gen G, a tale as old as time. But if you're a Gen G fan, one that can make you nervous.
It definitely can. Gen G's track record against T1 outside of the Worlds qualifiers has not been great. And on top of it all, this is a T1 that is at their best form since last year's Spring. Spring is the season of T1. They have a great history of succeeding in the first part of the year, especially, you know, if you consider their dynasty in the past and carrying that into Worlds. But tonight is a very tough matchup for Gen G. At the beginning of the season, you might have said otherwise, but at the end, where it matters most, T1 are trying to sprint across the finish line.
They absolutely are. Let's have a look at how they got here as we bring up the playoffs bracket. Of course, Gen G were waiting here in second place, and I think everyone knew that it was T1 that were coming for them. I think that Game1 chose correctly when they chose Humble Life Esports. That was certainly a series that did not look close, but one that I think made everyone waiting for the finals a little bit nervous. I mean, I want more than a 3-0, and Game1 are making a pretty good case for just sweeping it through.
I mean, it really feels that way. Almost everyone predicted that Gen G would be on this side of the bracket with T1, right? That T1 would end up going to this side because the Humble Life Esports pick seemed so obvious. And it feels like there's a history, there's a trend that in these important matches, Gen G just does not show up in best of fives, and they're going to have to break that trend tonight. They're going to have to break this cycle, and for Gen G to win against T1 here and actually go to that grand final would be such a statement for this team's organization, their history, and to go to a final and to try to go toe-to-toe with Game1 Kia once again would be a fantastic story, but it is going to be a very uphill battle, Atlas.
No, it absolutely will. This is going to be really rough. The last time they won a best of five, I think, was in playoffs round 1 last year. Outside of the World qualifiers, of course, because they always got that buff. We used to think that it was ㅣ that did it, because he always outperformed. However, it seems to just be an organizational thing where they get to a Worlds qualifier, they realize that it's do or die, and then they manage to take them down. So I'm very, look, I'm cautiously optimistic. I'm cautiously optimistic because I think that Gen G, if they play to their form, almost have a better chance of taking down Game1 Kia because they've shown that they can do it. They did it
at their best.
In the second round, absolutely.
At their best. Let's take a look at our predictions here. We're going to start, of course, with the Korean side of things, and you guys are going to see just how one-sided this is. Now, ㅣ did notably actually predict Gen G to go to the grand finals. He's the only one of the main Korean analysts to do so on the Korean caster side of things. And then, of course, on the English side, a little bit more of a unanimous vote. It's 4 for 4 do go to T1. And Bitdor, actually, Gorilla and Curl, you know, our analysts for the analyst test will all go the same way. Bitdor originally actually had predicted T1 to win the finals. He then made a statement on his stream that that was actually a mistake and that he did not expect T1 to beat Game1 Kia. But there was some controversy about that for a little bit. But everyone is expecting the bracket that you said when we did the POG state. Everybody has kind of the same bracket, right? T1 goes to the finals and lose to Game1 Kia. That's what everyone expects, right? But a season of so much turmoil and so many upsets, I don't think you can really count Gen G out just yet, even with these predictions.
Actually, the more I've thought about it, the more I like Gen G's chances. Because if they can get the monkey off their back, then it is actually going to be a lot better. But let's have a look at the fan prediction and see what you guys thought of this particular matchup. And look, it is very similar to our last playoffs round 2 match. where one team gets a heck of a lot of the votes. But 15%, I think, is actually a little bit better than what I was expecting, especially considering the extraordinary concentration of T1 fans on the planet.
Yeah, I kind of was surprised as well Gen.G got that many. But it just goes to show that a lot of people do believe in this team. And I think a lot of really smart League of Legends fans who aren't even necessarily a fan of either team that much do think Gen.G have a great chance of making it through, right? You know, from an analyst perspective and from a fan who watches LCK, which I know we have a lot of hardcore fans out there, I mean, Gen.G does have a really good chance to take it. If you looked at how they performed at their best throughout rounds 1 and round 2, you could make an argument that they were favored. It's just that new T1 form that we're seeing at the very end, where it matters most, that is really very concerning if you're a Gen.G fan.
And also just some of the problems that this team has against T1 just in general. But let's bring up points of the match and just have a look at how these teams made it here to these playoffs.
And this is actually such an exciting story. These teams are huge rivals here in Korea. You can see they both had back-to-back best-of-5 series in 2020. Who's going to win the first one in 2021? These teams are rivals even going as far back as the Samsung dynasty, right, that Gen.G acquired. Yeah. And these are two teams that have a huge Western influence as well in Korea. Even though they are Korean teams and are Korean rosters, they both have that kind of extra Western influence. They're very popular overseas. And so I think that's why this is such a fun and storied matchup between these two teams, because they have such a huge following in the West as well.
Yeah, and it also goes back extraordinarily far, right? You've got SKT, you know, Faker's debut in 2013. SKT look incredible, but then these incredible Samsung teams come out as well, and you sort of, that's what birthed a lot of this. And then, you know, like, getting a whole lot of world championships for SKT. They were on a roll, picked up a couple, and then, you know, Ruler and the gang pick up the 2017 world championship. Well, Ruler's still here.
Yeah.
And we'll have to see whether he's going to be enough to get them over the line here, as Rascal's also had a good season, although not as strong in round 2.
He really did have a great start this season. That first kill we had of the Camille versus the Gnar was actually the first kill of the spring season, actually, the very first game. And it was a fiery start for Rascal. At the very beginning of the season, he was given too many high-priority picks, right? He was given Renekton in first rotation, was able to play the Akali in that very rare moment when she was very popular, crushed it on the Camille. And then in round robin 2, right, our second round robin, he wasn't given those high-priority picks as much. And Kana actually is performing much better in the second round robin. He had a very weak start. He had one of the highest isolated death ratios of anyone in the top lane on our winning teams, but he has really turned it around as he reappears.
Yeah, and also it's like Kana's been playing the Rascal champions, right? And showing him like, this is what you used to be. Look at how good I am now. Well, the mid lane is another story that's a little bit similar to this. BDD has had an incredible season with some extraordinarily high highs, maybe not necessarily Chovy's level of high highs, but maybe a little bit more consistent. But he wasn't against T1. When we saw that series between these two teams, I think it shaped how a lot of us expected a series like this to go. And I'm trying my very best to keep that out of my mind, because this mid lane matchup is one where, you know, BDD's taken down Faker before. You know, this is a man that has denied Faker some of his finals, and not very many people could deny T1 in a final. I think they've lost like 2.
Yeah, it's insane, and Faker has had such great performances here at the very end. But when we'll take a look at the bottom lane, actually, it's really interesting. Both of these AD carriers are actually born in 1998, so they're the same age. And actually, Teddy has the winning record by 6 matches, which is kind of insane considering that this guy came from Jin Air, right? And his time in T1 has really shaped him into a top-tier player. Ruler has a lot more international stage experience overall, but it's Teddy who actually comes up on top domestically and has shown a better performance in the last few weeks of competitive play here in the LCK, and that's when it matters most.
Yeah, exactly. And actually, you know, if we omit international performance from our minds, which I know a lot of, you know, Teddy fans want to forget anyway, Teddy certainly has been very, very strong on home soil, especially after joining T1. Ruler, though, no slouch either. I felt like he wasn't his same extraordinarily consistent self the last time these two teams matched, and I'd be very interested to see whether Odin was right when he predicted that Gen.G, feeling a whole lot better now, are going to be able to step up to the task. In fact, both coaches very, very happy with their team's form moving into this series.
And let's take a look at some of the team stats. You could see that T1 did play that additional playoff round, so they had to show a little bit more, and we'll talk about that as we get into the drafts. But you could see, on average here, you know, more than regular season, it was a tougher match, right, for T1. But when you look at the stats over on Gen.G, I mean, there's a reason this team got that second round, or bye, right, or that first, you know, round of the bye of the first round, getting to the second round, because they were second place. You could see the Baron power play for both of these teams is very high, but Gen.G has been able to much more consistently across the season make those Baron plays happen and secure them. Their ability to control games where they are ahead is massive. And T1 is a more fiery early game team. Their drafting recently has also showed that, and they like to get ahead early. But if they fail to do so, I think that's where Gen.G is going to have a lot of power in this best of 5 potentially.
Yeah, and we have to remember that, you know, it was a while ago that Gen.G faced off against T1. They came back from that loss to beat Damwon Kia. They then destroyed DRX and KT. KT took a game. That was, you know, that was definitely impressive from KT, but still, they managed to sweep their way out. I think this is a very different story to what we saw from Halma Life Esports, right? That lost to T1, but then they had no more season left. There was no way to pick themselves up in an actual game to fight back. And I think that this is actually going to help Gen.G try to find some form here. As we do show you the roster, of course, no changes for Gen.G. This is the same squad from 2020 and the same squad now. The thing that's a little bit scary, right, is that when you've got the same 5 players,
right? Yeah.
You're not doing the same level of team building, right? Like T1 have had to incorporate Carrier into their squad. They've also had to do a hell of a lot of random experimentation with their roster throughout the earlier stages of the season. They've settled on all of the veterans, plus the absolute god of support on the bottom side of the map. I am standing by my nomination for Carrier as second place in the MVP rankings. He has been extraordinary.
I also put him in second, and that's the crazy part about this. This is the T1 roster that won Spring 2020, and then there was some questions in summer, right? There was a lot of shifting. Gumayushi was being pushed into the role very heavily, even as far back as the Worlds qualifiers, but they settled on this roster, which had one weak link in their 2020 roster, which was effort. And you see where, you know, he's ended up. He hasn't looked terrible by any means, but Carrier feels like a massive upgrade. It feels unfair that T1 can have 10 players and then shift back to form here at the very last moment with a huge upgraded support who's been the only consistent piece of their roster all year long. When we take a look at the mid matchup here, I mean, there's kind of been this term coin that's been going around, right? The 4 kings of mid, BDD, Chovy, Faker, and of course Showmaker, who waits at the end. And BDD of the 4, I feel, has been the quietest this season. But if you look at his stats, he's been very consistent, right? His kill participation is not as high as some of the other players, but he has certainly been great at doing consistent damage. And his champion pool, the Orion, the Syndra that we've seen him play so much, really indicates his playstyle is that kind of sit back, do consistent damage, set up for team fights. He's the initiator, and some mid laners aren't able to say that they can initiate team fights as consistently as BDD does, but he is so good at it, especially in the later parts of the game. That's why Gen.G's late game is so solid.
Yeah, that's also the fact that BDD, when he's on form, is so smart with all of his cooldown usage, especially in those later game team fights. When something gets into his head, he doesn't look the same. So I'm very much looking forward to seeing whether this team can get themselves together and find a victory. BDD on your screen right here, right now, looking very serious. Ruler doing exactly the same thing, of course, probably going to be calling for some pentakills to celebrate his 450th LCK game.
He is 14 kills away of hitting a huge kill milestone as well in this series, so very, very massive series for him if he can perform well here. And I think you're right, there is absolutely a mental block that can form around Gen.G in these longer best of 5s. We've seen them get swept so many times. It's not just that they don't perform well and their win record is not good in best of 5s, but they are often 3-0 swept in those best of 5s.
I mean, actually, to be honest, their stats in best of 5s are just really bad.
It's really rough.
I think they've won 5. It's like 5 games or something outside of the Worlds qualifier. It's
not great.
Not that very many victories, but I mean, they have to turn it around now, and they've got an opportunity. I think that this is a fresh start for best of 5 Gen.G, and if they want to reward their fans for sticking by them, it needs to be a sign here, right now, that they can actually manage to at least be competitive, right? Like, I don't need Gen.G to win. I just need to see them playing
at their best,
at their potential, right? Like that's what we need to see in this best of 5, and then it can go either way, and I think everyone's going to be happy.
I completely agree. I think that is really the question, is what Gen G do we see tonight? That was the question for T1 all of regular season, but at the very end, they settled on a roster, and their performances have been very good, and there aren't really any more questions about what T1's peak is or what T1 we're going to see today. It feels like you're kind of guaranteed to see that strong T1 roster that we have seen over the last few weeks, whereas Gen G, it feels like you're not 100% sure, and as we head into this first draft, I think a lot of this time and the extra best of 5 Gen G has had to study of T1 should come big into play here. I think the expectation for T1 is to still put a lot of attention on Rascal's champion pool, because that is where Gen G have drafted so many times, which is part of the reason why Rascal is in, kind of a quote-unquote slump right now, because it has been targeted in the draft so much in round 2. We see the Seraphine and Silas traded here early on. That's been kind of the trending topic as of late.
Yep.
But one of the big standouts for T1 in that series against DRX was the Varus priority that we saw from Teddy, and I think Gen G should definitely look towards that in this
I don't think
draft.
so. Let him play it. I thought I don't think it worked. I think they played it a couple of times, right? They lost one, won one, but I didn't really quite understand it. I love the Silas and the Seraphine bans away here. I feel like they watched the C9 series last night, where Silas was this big problem and we couldn't quite work out where to put Seraphine in the matchup and all these sorts of things. So that was definitely a bit of a shout out. I like it. As Renekton banned away from Rascal makes a whole lot of sense, and Volibear priority. This shows us a lot of good things from T1. This shows us the evolution that we've seen, but Thresh was available, and thank goodness they locked that one in.
Yep, Thresh was banned by DRX in first rotation all 4 games, actually, against T1. They were never going to give Keria the opportunity to play it, even when the sides were swapped. The response here is going to be the Udyr priority here with an early Jinx pick, and we have seen a lot more Jinx even without the Thresh as of late, and one of the pairings I was waiting for, and we finally saw yesterday, was that Jinx Tahm Kench. So there is an opportunity for Life to pick it up, and he will. This is, I think, a very strong bot duo that we haven't really seen come to fruition until playoffs, and I was a little bit surprised by it, but you could see the power and the safety that this Tahm Kench brings to an otherwise immobile, very high scaling AD carry. Really liking the draft here so far for Gen G. I feel like the Aphelios Thresh, is still strong in its own right, but this makes a very fiery bot lane that could scale up extremely well.
Yeah, it'll be fiery later, that's absolutely for sure, but I do really like the fact that the trade of these safety supports in the Tahm Kench Thresh is now a thing that teams have to watch out for. It's no longer ban the Thresh and then you're fine, you don't have to deal with these hyper carries, because we've even seen, Jinx Rel work out relatively well. And see what does happen, as that is a Zillion ban up against BDD, of course, one of his old favorites.
Yeah.
BDD and Bjergsen certainly sharing the pocket Zillion, as I thought I saw Keria's eyes widen when the Aatrox was banned, and thought he was copying me, because that is an interesting choice here, just wanting to deny a bit of early game power from T1.
That is definitely the idea here, and something that can happen oftentimes when you have control of the top side with Aphelios, is you get that free lane swap, you get a lot of extra farm. As we see the Scion ban coming through here now, and the Twisted Fate ban does show us that Gen G are a little bit concerned about, a similar draft that we saw in the Gen G series, where you see Faker on the TF, and then you have a controlling top side, you teleport, get kills on rotation, and start to really control the early game tempo. And both the both the Aatrox and the Twisted Fate bans kind of showcase that Gen G is worried about T1, get my team names right here, T1 getting that early tempo advantage. And they want to play for this later Tahm Kench Jinx scaling. Looks like we're going to see some of that match, though, with Faker's Victor.
Yeah, this is, the Orianna was probably the most obvious pick to come through here. It does synergize extraordinarily well with almost everything that they have going on right now, but especially the Udyr, being able to speed up the Jinx before she gets excited, also very, very powerful. And the Victor, of course, going to be locked in. Cannon finds it absolutely hilarious, and we'll see what he's actually going to pick up here to put towards the top side of the map.
I mean, the Akali could have been a top lane pick, but, I think you don't want to do that one blind here. It's just so risky. I mean, they banned the Scion away.
Yeah, I want some CC.
Yeah, I honestly, Gragas, I think, is a safe pick, and that's where they're going to go towards.
That's
because
like the most CC in one champion. I love it. Perfect, thank you.
I mean, that is strong CC. It's safe into almost every matchup you're going to face on the top side. And I wonder where Rascal goes as a response here, because, it doesn't feel like there's really a great counter pick. ooh, the Ornn would be a really big throwback to one of his stronger champions, historically speaking, and also would give this comp even more scaling power and team fighting prowess. And even though it's a rare pick here, and it's not necessarily going to be a banger matchup in the top side of the map, I really like Gen.G understanding that if they can have enough initiation and enough of a front line for Jinx to actually do that consistent damage, it is going to be very difficult for T1 to front to back.
Well, I mean, it will be unless T1 just win the game in 20 minutes, because Gen.G are basically a no-rush 20 comp with this. I'm not sure how you're supposed to also pilot an Udyr in a comp like this as well, because it's going to be difficult to try and wrestle away any of this lane priority that Udyr does value so much.
I think that the biggest power for Gen.G in the early game is going to be in the Orianna Udyr, actually, where you have to threaten Faker. Otherwise, I agree. The Udyr isn't going to have that much power early on, and it feels like the draft has kind of moved away from where it started here for Gen.G in a lot of ways. But I do think that if they can get an early, not even an early advantage, if they don't fall behind early, then they are going to be able to scale up team fights extremely well. They have great initiation. They have insane lockdown. If you get caught as anyone on the side of T1, okay, first person who gets caught gets Lantern. Second person who gets caught is dead almost every time. And if Keria is just unable to Lantern some of these players away, I feel like it's super easy for objective control later on for Gen.G.
Yeah, and look, if Keria is using his Lantern on anyone other than Aphelios, then there should be a way for Clid to just run through and stop the Aphelios from being able to do exactly what he wants. Ornn as well, fantastic with that long-range CC with the Ornn Horn. And this goes back to one of Rascal's picks, right? Before he was the Camille Renekton guy being aggressive in all of his lanes, he was Ornn one-trick for so long. He just loved jumping on this champion, but he's a very different champion to who he used to be, right? It's not going to be quite the same situation, as BDD has paused the game just a little bit, just trying to make sure that everything is all right.
BDD, we were so close to getting into this series. Come on. Hey, it's
right.
the
We'll
best
forgive
time,
you for now.
The best time to have a pause is before the game starts. It's an audio issue we are being told with his headset, so we'll get that sorted out, because communication in this 5v5 game is of the utmost importance.
Yep, somewhat important. I wonder how many audio issues we've had so far this season. I wish someone kept count, because
not as many as we've had Cloud Souls.
I mean, that's probably true. That is probably true. But I feel like every time there's an issue, it's something wrong with the headsets. And I think maybe we...
You want to narrow it down to a brand and be like, well, what's going on?
I just feel like we could be looking into how we figure out our audio system, you know? Or maybe it's just really hard to make audio work on a day-to-day basis. I'm not entirely sure.
I mean, usually when teams are playing from home, they have a specific setup that they use, but also, you know, Riot captures all of the audio. That's how we get our really cool open mic checks and stuff like that. So it's a pretty complicated system. And when you're playing on LAN, it's usually just connected to a very complicated system that Riot has done, you know, and we have a really awesome studio here. It's very well equipped for these types of things and has been built that way. Whereas trying to set it for home sometimes gets a little bit more complicated with all the recordings and the wires and what program you're using to connect and making sure Riot can record properly so we have that data. So it's not as simple as like, just restart Discord, bro. Like,
yeah, maybe not quite as plug and play, but desperately wanting to get into this one. You can see Faker. I can see some fire in those eyes, Wolf, and I imagine that if you're a Gen.G fan, you're a little bit frightened for what this team's going to be capable of. I want to go back to what we were discussing before, because I've been sort of one of the main proponents of discussing Gen.G as a team that has a weakness to T1, right? And I did that whilst omitting the World's Gauntlet. And also, I think the last best of 3 that they played in the summer regular season. I want to go back to that because that was a very different T1. This is a T1 that felt like they didn't have their cohesion. This was the time when Cuz was struggling a lot, not actually able to sync with his team quite as well as I think a lot of people were expecting, especially for a player that was so good when he was playing for DRX. Like, he really did come into his own. His Gragas was the best in the league and was also meta back at that time. Like, this is a guy that we're expecting a lot from and then just didn't quite work out. Effort was also going through a lot of his struggles and the team wasn't figuring themselves out. So I think it makes sense to sort of forget that era and go back to what made T1 great in spring, because that is what's happening right now. That is the T1 that we're looking at and what Gen.G is looking across the rift to as well at this point in time. So can definitely be possibly a throwback, but also a huge opportunity for Gen G to say, no. We are the great team that you guys know us of from regular seasons past, and we will be able to do this again.
So we got the confirmation BDD is restarting his computer, which is why you saw his mic, or rather his camera, freeze for just a moment there. But it will be back into the game as soon as that is done. I want to talk about T1 because it feels like there was this really big blemish, right, between the Worlds qualifiers and also summer, right, between last year's summer and now playoffs of spring in 2021. And if you're a T1 fan, you definitely want to delete that tape. You're trying to find the footage. You're trying to make sure it's not archived.
Yeah, they're also still trying to get rid of 2018 as well at the same time.
But like this is a time where I said it earlier this season where I said we don't know the ending of the story yet for T1, but this is going to be a season that fans never forget because of all the rosters we saw, all the changes, all the shuffles. And what it turns out that T1 needed at the end of the day was actually to go back to what worked before. And it's interesting that Gen G is one of the only teams in the LCK has made almost no changes, right? They have no major changes to their roster. They're starting 5 for the LCK throughout regular season and playoffs. And T1 actually went back to basically Gen G's strategy. That's what is so ironic about this matchup in the playoff series because Gen G didn't change anything, and some people were concerned maybe they didn't change enough. Is this team going to be able to make the run? Sure, they'll make playoffs. Will they be able to win the whole thing? T1 did all the experimentation. There was a lot of learning involved. There was a lot of failing as well on the way. And where we ended up is actually basically Gen G's style. We're going back to what worked before with the addition of Keria. So it is kind of ironic in that sense that T1 actually kind of adopted Gen G's strategy over a longer period of time with a lot more trials. And I think that's what makes this team stronger than it was even in 2020 spring, though, is all that learning, all the added pressure. I think maybe at some points, some of these players have had some of the lowest points in their careers stress-wise.
Oh, absolutely.
But I think what the end result is something that these players will never forget, and they've gained so much experience that it's crazy. We'll never ever see anything like this again, I don't think, from what we saw from T1 this year. I don't think that the League of Legends community will ever see a roster this much trialed by fire over the course of one season.
I mean, I feel like every T1 roster is trial by fire, right? Just because there are so many eyes glued to this squad. But I think something has to be said for giving these players a break throughout the season, allowing Zeus to come in, allowing Gumayusi to try and bear some of that brunt. Elm and Owner as well coming through and helping out, not to mention Closer. Like, what this does is alleviates some of that stress. It allows Canna to put 3,000 games into Nah in solo queue, right? Because he doesn't have to spend that time scrimming. He can just try and grind and grind and grind, and we've seen the value, right? We've seen his Nah go from what looked like an orange buff to an absolute monster. He hard carried in so many of those games up against Kingin, and actually in that series, DRX were playing so much better than we expected. I think that needs to be reiterated.
Yeah, absolutely.
That was a series that actually after the first game I was like, oh my goodness, this is actually a best of 5 that we need to pay attention to. And all credit goes to DRX for bringing that. But what it did was it brought out a T1 that had to play to their best to win. And even though some of their drafts were definitely iffy, the quality of play from T1 was definitely up there, and I think that Canna deserves so much of the credit for that.
I also feel like we could say that about every team that, you know, you pointed this out so beautifully, and I keep always going back to it. This was one of the easiest brackets you could have ever had to predict, but every team that we had in the L column overperformed. From Nongshim, right?
Absolutely,
to DRX, to then second round Hanwha Life Esports, who actually did, you know, put up a fight yesterday. It wasn't an amazing series for them by any means, and there were some questions in the draft, but every team did better than I think analysts predicted them to do, but we still did get that Destiny bracket, right? So once the headsets are on, the headphones are fixed now, and the webcam is back up, we are going to be jumping into the game.
I can see the webcam's on. Yep. I think it's happening. I think we're almost into the game. We might actually be doing some video games.
Yes.
Here, Wolf, which is extraordinarily exciting.
There's a lot of added pressure, actually, you know, going into a pause like this extended before Game 1. If you were in the right zone.
Can we not talk about it? Because, you know, there was a slight delay before a final, maybe in 2020, and I don't want to talk about it. So we're just going to pretend that this didn't happen, and if during I'm going to do a production shout out here. We need this particular pause to be completely omitted from the VOD. When the VOD is uploaded, it needs to not have this in it, and then maybe that is going to help things.
But we said so many good things, Atlas. People need to know what we said, you know, about these teams and their history with each other.
I mean, I'm sure we'll probably say them again. We've got a few hours in us, Wolf. I think we'll be able to get there. maybe we can be more succinct as well. I do love Hodoring over some of these extraordinarily seasoned matchups that we have, because there are new and old rivalries brewing, right? It used to be the telecom war, KT versus T1. Doesn't really feel like that anymore. This is the big rivalry when it comes to big organizations here, especially from a Western perspective. Just like you mentioned, there is so much more Western influence for both Gen G and T1. So I think that there is a little bit more of a connection there. But Gen G need to do something to bring themselves back into this matchup, right? Because a rivalry that's one-sided isn't fun at all. But here we go, finally. Onto the rift for T1 versus Gen G. T1 will have the blue side. Gen G chose red, I believe, moving into this to make sure that they did have the best matchups they could possibly get. That being said, having a look at the drafts now, you might be looking at Gen G, wondering whether they thought the game was going to be starting at 20 minutes. Because if it is, then they're going to look real good. And there is so much on Klid's shoulders to put out fires in this game. And it's not what Udyr wants to do. Udyr wants to smash through his jungle, start trying to deny things and play off pressure that his lanes have. And T1, with what they have right now, should be able to get themselves some lane pressure. I think a lot is on BDD as well, because the Victor Orianna matchup can go either way. And it'll all be about timings. This is a very interesting way to start things off.
It certainly is. And I think it almost feels like this is a big test for T1 in terms of how much early game control they can get and how they're going to utilize these drafts in the future going into this best of 5. Whereas Gen G started things off with a very different idea than where they ended, right? You know, we saw finally the last pick Ornn to go all in on the scaling and going for that later game here. And it does feel like a no-rush comp for sure. I think the only lane where you have kill pressure is in the mid lane with the Udyr. Otherwise, as you said, it's going to be a more defensive setup, absolutely, for Klid in this game. And if he can run around and put out fires and actually stabilize Gen G as being even, or, you know, if something bad happens for T1, if there's a mistake ahead going into that 20-minute mark, then Gen G are going to have a very huge advantage. I'm curious to see how this bot lane goes, because this is a tale of very much two different styles of the same concept.
Yeah.
You know, scaling champions here that work very well with Thresh, work very well with Tahm Kench. We've seen Tahm Kench be kind of the Thresh replacement since it's been banned from so many drafts. And I think it's really just going to be about performance here on the day for these 4 players.
Very interested to see how Carry is going to perform. This has been one of his best champions as he misses a hook. That is beautifully cursed by myself. I apologize. Well, but his Thresh has been exceptional throughout this this season. We saw the stats at the bottom of your screen. Over 70% win rate is Cuz. Look, these Raptors can get angry. Talk to POG about it. But of course, he's Olaf. He's absolutely fine. Wants to be as low as possible. As BDD now down to 200. And Faker having a real good time. So far, this matchup has been very, very even. Like we said before. But not looking very even in the mid lane right there, as Faker doesn't have very much mana. So a possibility for BDD to make it back in and start trying to return the shove.
He also still has Corrupting Pot and Cookie. So there's Cookie left. Once he has that eaten up, he's going to be fine. He's just going to sit back and play it passively. If Faker tries to really push the issue here, he does put himself under threat of being ganked by this Udyr. And he knows the timing of this too, because he knows Udyr is actually going to be taking the scuttle here. So he can actually go up, get that ward on the Raptors with this extra pressure that he has in the mid lane. It doesn't overextend. Very well played here by Faker so far.
But this is what we were talking about, right? Like, Faker should be able to farm quicker earlier against the Orianna. We know that her lane control late is definitely much better, but ramps up.
Here comes Klid.
As, yep, Klid's going to wrap around from behind. He's going for carrier here. Of course, you can't lantern yourself as the Flame Chompers are avoided. Teddy, actually, though, not able to get onto the lantern, and he's just gobbled up by Life, who will say thank you so much for the first blood. The crab ray from Klid as he takes down his former teammate.
You know, in this moment, T1 actually had 2 extremely pushed lanes. They had mid pushed where Faker was able to interrupt here. Interrupt on the channel, interrupt on my color point, but you know, they had that mid lane push, and it felt like T1 was so focused on getting value, that extra ward, and Faker was stepping back, and it felt like that was the place where T1 felt most vulnerable. They did not realize that Klid could wrap around their ward they have on the brush there in the river, take the long path, and then get that kill. Because they had that warded, they felt safe, but it was a really easy punish there. We'll watch it again. look at the map here. Look at where Faker is standing, and look at where that ward is on the river. Clid goes all the way around, and they just have no idea this is coming. Way overextended, and it's just a really easy cleanup from here. Teddy is chain CC'd, and there's nothing Keria could do for him.
Yeah, body blocking Lantern as well was really clever there from Gen G. However, I thought that, you know, Teddy had an opportunity to take it a little bit earlier, but Keria holding onto his flash, not actually using that in order to create extra distance so that Teddy could have then pressed the button. So maybe that was what they were waiting for, just didn't quite get their opportunity. Definitely a great start here for Gen G though, and if they can continue to play like this, then like this is already like a hard outscale in the draft, right? So getting that kill is even more valuable.
And it just feels like, you know, where T1 are trying to get this extra strength in the bottom lane might be a little bit overzealous, right? I mean, if you end up getting caught a second time, then things, I mean, the game could just end basically. So you have to be really careful here. A lot of extra warding from Clid. You know, in this early game, as you mentioned, he has to play kind of defensively, generally speaking. The fact that he got, you know, helped get a kill at all is pretty insane at this stage, and he is able to clear away a lot of that vision. And you're always kind of scared of Olaf trying to take an early Drake, so this is what Gen G is posturing around right now. They spot the Olaf, he clears the ward, and they just do not want T1 to have the opportunity to try to double objective, get the Drake early to then try to turn that into a Rift Herald advantage. That goes wide.
Yeah, and we've also got Cuz going back now as well, almost conceding control of this bottom side as Keria finds an auto, not actually looking for a hook just yet, as Cuz just happy feeding, waiting for his Krug camp to come off cooldown.
And this is an opportunity for an early Drake for Gen G, in fact, as Rascal is looking for some extra damage. But look at this, like, you know, versus an Olaf, you don't get this advantage all too often, but with Gen G having the opportunity here to clear vision with the Udyr pick, there's just no way that you can safely come over and deal with this as T1. They didn't have bot priority, and now Cuz is here.
Yep, Life is going to flash. He had flash, he had cleanse, and he's able to use the cleanse now to get out of the hook, as, yeah, Clid's going to come on over, but Gen G, the bottom lane doesn't actually require him. They do manage to get both of the summoner spells out of the Tahm Kench, definitely very valuable there, but Ruler still has heal, still has flash, they still have safety in this lane.
Yeah, they certainly do. And unfortunately, T1 aren't able to turn this Drake take into a punish, right? So Clid gets away with it, they're able to get an early advantage here, and now T1 can't use this Olaf pick to get that double. Oh, Faker!
Yeah, shockwave from BDD, gravity field goes down, that's going to block BDD from getting on through, but he nails the cannon minion, and Jonah Strong definitely going to be very, very happy with the fact that not very many cannons have been missed so far this series, certainly a good sign. As, yeah, Faker and BDD, a tale as old as time between these two, 3 CS. Between them, just showing how close this matchup is.
Yeah. And
will come down to a lot of lane manipulation and the jungle, of course, to see what is actually going to happen.
And speaking of the jungle, I mean, if he was able to get, I think this is best case scenario for Faker, considering the shockwave goes off. Like, if he had to flash there, you know, to survive, like if he was a little bit lower on health, then the follow-up kill potential is really high when BDD's next shockwave comes up. You have Clid coming in. So the fact that Faker is able to prevent himself from using flash there and still get out is pretty massive for potentially those ganks to come through later.
Oh yeah, especially with the Herald coming up as well.
Yep.
This is going to be the big fight that we're looking out for. You saw Keria already just making a bit of a movement up there. Gen G do have vision of the area, but we're not actually jockeying for position on that particular objective just yet. Top side as well, going very, very well. Ornn does have, you know, the ability to deny CC, so Cast can be Bellowsed Breath pretty comfortably for the Ornn.
Yeah.
So it does help him in the matchup. Gragas should, of course, have a lot more early shove. But Ornn is one of these champions that has suffered quite a few nerfs, so isn't quite as oppressive as he used to be. But still does manage to warp games as T1 going to come on over. Shelly is going to get started. And with the fact that there was priority on the top side of the map, this should just go over to them. As you can see, Teddy's still actually farming on the bottom side pretty comfortably as well. And looks like Gen G might just be a bit late to the party.
Yeah, Gen G have to commit if they're going to pull out of the bot lane. I mean, you can't just let this go and also let Teddy free farm. They're being a little bit indecisive, but they are going to take the engage now.
Actually, Rascal moving on over here. You can see Keria getting there a little bit late as the Phalanx has been set up here by Gen G. And Shelly's not going to releash. The barrel going to miss as in goes the Ornn Horn. Does get a couple of knockups as Faker can take himself a lantern, but he says no. He wants to just get damage here onto Gen G. And
Teddy's coming up.
yeah, T1 have taken it back, but Shelly did reset. Now Ruler's turn to come on through. Super Mega Death Rocket at the ready here.
This is basically a ring around the rosy here for Gen G. They're not able to take the Herald themselves, but they can deny it multiple times here from T1.
Yeah, getting control of these chokes as well is just so easy for BDD at the same time. He's got that Shockwave at the ready. There is no Ornhorn, but he did manage to take down the Herald. Let's see whether any of these kills do come down. In a little bit of trouble is the Olaf as the eye is taken. 3-man Shockwave from BDD is huge, but now Rascal out of position. Super Mega Death Rocket body blocked by Carrier, cuz would have been very, very close to taking him down there, as it is going to be secured by Gen G. I actually missed seeing who managed to pick that one up, but it's Life that goes over and collects it.
It's Life, yeah, who takes it, but it was really well played by Gen G. And Gen G did a lot of really cool things in this exchange, right? I mean, I guess we might not really get a replay of it because it was not that bloody of a fight. But
of course we will.
It's a fight where Gen G had a lot of vision manipulation. They sent Ruler back to lane, but they sent him actually away from vision. They didn't send him through the river, they sent him on the safe path. So T1 had to back off of the Herald the first time because they thought, well, we can't just leave Teddy in the bot side and then 4v5. So they backed away, you got the reset, then you see the rejoin from Ruler, and he's in a much better position to actually help contest. The Shockwave was pretty amazing there from BDD as well at the end to help them get away safely.
Yeah.
So bloodless take here, but it's very much Gen G playing the macro game extremely well. They get away with both objectives early, and this is not what we should be saying about their comp. You called it a no rush 20 comp. The fact that they have this much of a lead and this much control early on is very concerning.
Yeah, and it's not like, you know, T1 are all in on early game. I mean, they are as far as the jungle is concerned, but they do have a lot of scaling themselves. It's not ludicrous.
Yeah.
However,
I mean, they have a Victor Aphelios.
however, when you factor in like Jinx, Orianna, Ornn, I mean, if you can't call that a late game comp, then I don't know what you
Their late
can,
game is stronger, right? Gen G's definitely has a stronger late game. I think most would agree.
Yeah.
With the Ornn in particular.
But it's like if you take scaling light into ultra scaling, it does get rough. As ultra rated, yeah, Clint
here.
Going to come on through. He's got the flash, and Fake is going to answer instantly with his own.
And remember that flash I talked about earlier? That Faker knew it was coming. He's so smart.
Super Mega Maybe Rocket.
Remember when I said Faker didn't use his flash earlier? You know, if it's not there in this case, he dies, right?
Oh, yeah,
That's
100%.
what I'm talking about. Like the kill pressure in the mid lane is so scary. Victor into Orianna when there's an Udyr there on the field, because he will just rip through the last part of that health bar so easily. But it was very well handled by Faker. He does lose his flash, of course, and then the next Drake is up, and Gen G are just taking this early game one step at a time so brilliantly every single set play. If they can take this advantage into the late game, we might have them taking the first game in this series.
Not to mention, we will not have a Cloud Soul as well. It's going to be a Mountain. Certainly, that is the Gen G
Ornn is
right there.
So happy with that.
So is Clid, and so is Life. Like,
and so is everybody. Yeah.
Yeah, this is definitely a big deal if Gen G are able to stack up a couple and get themselves towards the Soul.
So
T1 can also utilize it. They have the Thresh, Olaf, and Gragas that are going to be pretty tanky as the game goes on.
And this is not a coincidence that the Shockwave is committed to right before this moment. Faker has to flash, they get extra mid prio.
Yep.
And this happens right before the Drake comes up. You have that small of an advantage. It actually snowballs into a massive opportunity for Gen G, and they're able to take this away. And now they have a 2 Drake advantage with the extra Rift Herald, so they're going to have that extra gold that comes with that too. And T1 have kept the gold fairly even. I mean, this is a 0.4 gold difference between you can see in the graph. Like, the graph makes it look crazy, but it's very small. Yeah. But here comes the Herald. Some extra plate gold going to go here into the mid lane. And Gen G are in such a fantastic position. If they can keep taking these plays into objectives, I just don't see how T1 can recover unless they make a really big stand here on this first Mountain Soul, or Drake rather. It's going to be a Soul point for Gen G. I mean, I think that's where you have to take your stand as T1. If you fail, though, you're going to be in a world of hurt against the scaling.
Yeah. I mean, T1 have showed that they can just outplay you, right? Despite composition. They've had many comps worse than this and still managed to find victories. But they haven't had early games that have sort of fallen away from them. And we keep talking about it, like, you look at the top of the screen, you're like, but Atlas, it's like 500 gold. This game is like really close. What are you talking about? But I mean,
it's not as close as the gold graph shows.
Yeah, it's this is Gen G coasting. This is Gen G getting their no rush, which is exactly what they want.
Yeah. It's really a very concerning thing that, you know, unfortunately T1 don't have the agency in this game, and Olaf in a lot of ways just feels like in some of these comps and with how these games play out, a worse version of Udyr, a worse version of Hecarim in a lot of ways.
Yeah, it basically is, right?
And that's what's concerning about the priority that we saw here, you know, in the draft for T1. And the Udyr works so well defensively, as you pointed out, but you have threat in the mid lane. And Victor is one of these champions that you pick for scaling, but when Gen G go all in on scaling, it doesn't feel as good anymore.
Yeah.
And when he's being threatened and unable to join these early team fights, it just feels real bad for T1. The Drake advantage means that Gen G 2, if they do end up losing a team fight in these upcoming next objective fights, they have kind of a buffer zone where they're still going to be okay. Whereas T1 doesn't really have options to give up Drakes anymore. They have to fight.
Yeah, I think they can give away one more maybe, but if they give away Soul, like, it's feeling real Dunzo as Cuz going to run on forward. Strikebreaker utilized in a very early Ragnarok, but 2 versus 3, they were never really going to get too much done there. And you can see Rascal just continuing to be absolutely fine in this matchup.
Yeah, and look at, I mean, when you make a play like that as Gen G, worst case scenario, you're going to force either Cuz's ultimate, you might get Faker's flash, and if you get a kill, you get the tower, you know, you get the whole turret. And it's not like they sent Ruler. He's still free farming on the bottom side. You're forcing T1 to make defensive plays and rotate around the map while also losing nothing. Gen G have taken this comp that scales really well, but have utilized it as an early to mid-game comp so extremely well that they have always in this game such an inherent tempo advantage. Speaking of which, now they are able to rotate over to the Rift Herald, look for a second one here. And T1 just can't really easily get over here to deny this. They're caught in an awkward back timing.
Yeah. It's just like, I don't know. I don't know what Gen G are going to be able to do here to, what T1 are going to be able to do here to try and stem the bleeding, right? Because they need to get this game moving in their direction, and they need to do so extraordinarily quickly. Rift Herald could be an opportunity for that. And, you know, some item timings have come in. You have the Leandries picked up on Faker. He's got his Mythic together, and that cannot be said so much for BDD, who may have to look for a reset before they do go for any of these fights. We do have the Frostfire Gauntlet to come through from Rascal, and these ornaments are not far away.
Yeah,
That's
really
when
not.
you start really seeing these two teams, you know, drift apart when it comes to, you know, the gold difference, because the amount of value that you get from those items is so high.
And also, too, if Gen G get this Mountain Soul, then it's going to be much more difficult to pick a target with a cask, for example, in a team fight. Whereas the Ornhorn is always going to be extreme value, even in terms of its ability to zone and help peel for Ruler's Jinx to pop off. She's going to have, you know, an Ornn ornament later on, too. Gen G lost vision control over this Drake, which is extremely critical. T1 were able to take that away, bring that reset. So this is actually pretty massive. T1 have a great opportunity to force this fight on their terms for the first time in this game.
Cuz standing at the front, you've got Rascal in pretty good horn position as Ruler out of the fight for the moment. And T1 are going to start this one up. Ruler now just going to move on over with the rest of his team. Gets through unscathed as another control ward goes down. Gen G have picked up the aggro, and you can feel just how much both of these teams know the importance of this position. In comes the Ram, looking for Cuz, who does throw down the Ragnarok, but no way can he get into position. And T1 are going to give it away. You can see they were like, nope, it's a little too dangerous. Losing a fight here would be catastrophic.
Yeah.
We have to give it up.
And that's why it feels lose-lose for T1 in this game, Atlas, because you give up the Drake here. That's a massive advantage for Gen G. They're on Soul Point now, and if you try and lose the fight, then you lose the game like at that moment, right? But now it feels like you're just losing the game slower, but I think it was the right call to back off. I mean, the Ornhorn alone.
They had to, right, yeah.
The Ornhorn alone just makes it so you can't even attempt to contest, and that's the power, even before we get to the Supreme Late game, of Ornn in these 5v5 fights. And Gen G might not have been in a position to actually force this fight on their terms if they were behind earlier, and they just have been so stable and so slightly ahead in every tempo occasion. They're in a good way. Now, Teddy is getting a lot of value here, by the way. A lot of extra gold going to this Aphelios in bot lane.
I mean, look at the top lane. Same thing's happening on the other side. So trading evenly, it's absolutely not what you can really do, right? Because Gen G just look like they have this composition that should be able to cruise towards easier and easier team fights in the later stages of the game. And barring, like, a miracle.
Yeah,
T1, right?
I agree, and LS2, this is against what we've been seeing from T1 a lot of the season is taking a really strong, aggressive draft and taking a tempo advantage. And it feels like when
well, I mean, like it's not a
Yeah.
tempo draft necessarily, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It's just less scaling than what Gen G has.
Yeah, and they seem to not be able to force fights in these situations where they're trading down a chess piece basically in this game.
Yeah.
And if you do this for too long, when you're also down 3 Drakes, you're going to have a very serious problem ahead. And it feels like procrastination almost here for T1. But the more you think about what T1 could do proactively, when you look at their comp, they don't have great options. It's an Olaf who has no kills and no assists early on. You don't have a comp that can actually be proactive realistically here. So it's a big problem.
It feels like not anymore. As Teddy's going to pick up a lantern, move back towards this mid lane. Mid control is looking to be where it's at as we tick over to 20 minutes. I don't think either of these teams are going to be taking any Barons anytime soon. I think the next fight is going to be in 2.5 minutes.
Yep.
When this Mountain Soul is available for Gen G, and T1 wanting to deny it. Hook going to go wide. Under Clid there, who's very, very fast and is pretty capable. They have face checking right now.
They have forced so many early Ragnaroks out of Cuz too in some of these skirmishes, and had they forced one there, I think it could have been a push to actually drop the Rift Herald, but they are fairly conservative here instead. And remember, they still have this second Rift Herald, which they can use upcoming here to get that extra Drake Cryo. That's sometimes what the Rift Herald, the second one, is used for, is actually just a little bit of extra control around the objective. It doesn't give you as much gold because the plates are down by that time of the game.
No, but it gives you shove in a lane.
Exactly.
And I think you're exactly right. Certainly could be an opportunity. We'll see whether it's actually going to be up at the right time. I think it might be just
it's a little off, I think.
A little bit too early,
yeah.
As Rascal does tidy up the Gromp, and we'll just move back to being ahead in lane by about 10 CS right now. At this point in time, it's more just a statement of how this game has gone rather than how the lanes have gone, because of course 21.5 minutes. It's not really laning phase anymore, but
this feels like the old days of LCK, right? A 22-minute
it's
one-kill
old Gen
game.
G, right?
Yeah.
This is exactly what it is. The team that felt inevitable, the team that played so boring, but was always able to find these late games, and teams weren't punishing them, right?
Yeah, and sometimes, you know, if you're T1, you do get a little panicked, right? I mean, not T1 in particular, but teams in this similar situation might feel the need to fight. And
no, but they have that need. That need is there.
Yeah,
it's not fake. It's real.
Yeah, and I think T1 have actually shown really great discipline, even though they are getting choked out of this game. It feels like T1's game plan is to take one really big decisive fight when they see an opportunity. They're waiting for a big mistake out of Gen G, and it's not proactive play, and it might cost them this first game, but I think given the situation, it's correct, because if you make one wrong move, the game literally will end. You cannot recover if you lose one team fight as T1, so you just have to wait for opportunities, and their comp just doesn't have great initiation to set up for it. A cask isn't going to be enough, especially if they give up this Drake. And I mean, the Rift Herald is going to be at that timing right now where they can try to push it through. It's not going to. It'll be just destroyed instantly, but it's going to give them a slight edge here.
But I mean, all of this tussling. I mean, you guys might meme about the K-Ram and things like that. Control of the mid lane is so important. Clid puts down the Rift Herald at the last possible second, and now Shirley is going to help them be able to move into this river, grab the control that they can get.
He pushes it at the back, so it actually is the most threatening with the wave, so they actually have to respond to this T1 do. Instead of just pushing it at the front, it gets a charge even, because T1 cannot give up this position.
Yeah, Fake is actually there just to try and tidy it up, but now it's a 5 versus 4 here in theory. See whether Faker can get over in time. Body slam onto Rascal. Gonna get knocked up though is Canna. Takes some rocks, able to utilize his stopwatch to avoid the shockwave, and now no shockwave is a huge deal.
That's a great trade for T1, but isn't enough. Baker's going for a huge flank here.
Yep, Call the Forge God is available. Clid felt something in his waters. Spots Faker going for the slight flank, and now he's looking to close in. We'll see where Gen G are going to put themselves in this particular moment.
I love the harass coming through from Faker here on the left side. He's just out of range of getting picked, and now T1 have reset the Drake, and they actually have priority here. Look at where Kana is. He's in such a great spot. This is beautiful from T1.
Yeah, we'll see whether he can actually blast Cone over. As you can see, he's going to get tongue lashed as now Clid getting on in there, not going to be able to find the smite. Now they have thrown his life away. The Devour is going to be available as Teddy. The close-range weapons are so scary. The cast comes out, but the Blast Cone keeps Rascal alive after the flash.
This fight from T1 was exactly what I'm talking about. You play safe, you wait for a mistake, you wait for an opportunity. The Shockwave was Gen.G's best tool of wrestling that control away. They stopwatch it, they push in forward, they put Faker on the left side there because they know that Gen.G cannot commit to chase him or they're going to lose the Drake no matter what. And I think you're willing to give Faker's life for that exchange if you have to, but they don't have to. Faker pushes the envelope so hard on the left side of that flank there to do that extra damage, while meanwhile Kana gets control of the top, gets set for a cast. That was so well played from T1. And again, it's a killless fight, but they're able to wrestle control of the Drake away. And T1 is so good at these high pressure situations. I'm very impressed with how they handled that.
No, it was well played. No Call of the Forge God actually used. Gen.G just didn't find themselves with the coordination to actually make that one work. And also fighting into Teddy with Crescendum Severum would have been very, very frightening. I was like watching his Calibrum ammo go down, and I was thinking, oh, what does he have next? Of course, Teddy knows, and he utilizes it, gets towards that Severum, and then the pile-in feels so much worse because he's completed his Runans. The AoE damage close range is so frightening, and Gen.G don't want to fight like that, right? They want to be able to fight front to back with Ruler, utilizing the range advantage. And it felt like that wasn't going to be the case in that particular moment.
Gen.G are still ahead in this game, and we're still heading towards a longer game because obviously this has kind of slowed down the tempo of the game in a lot of ways, but T1 just could not afford to give that Drake up. But Gen.G still have control of this mid lane. They're still now controlling vision on this Baron. They have a comp that can clear vision so easily with this Udyr pick. So this is T1 taking one baby step, right?
Yeah.
It's 2 steps forwards and 1 step back, almost it feels like, in this game for them. But you're going to have to see a lot more of this from T1 if they're going to come back and win this game. Because, yeah, again, less than 1,000 gold lead. It's 500 gold lead right now. But the 3 Drakes cannot be ignored. And the scaling that we've talked about, we've beaten to death, you know, in this cast, is just a huge factor. It's an elephant in the room. This Kana's not going to get this, sadly.
I actually think it's not bad of Gen.G just to give up that Drake, right?
Yeah.
They realized they didn't have optimal positioning, and like, just don't.
And that's
wait until you get all of the ornaments, right?
Yeah.
Wait until your Kraken Demolisher is online, your Chem Tank is well and truly fueled up.
And that's what the 3 Drake advantage gives you, right? Is that extra buffer. So, you know, you get the opportunity to threaten it if T1 actually overextend, you win the game. If they take the Drake, you just walk away. They have the complete control over every aspect of this game right now, and T1 are just trying to pick up the pieces. The stopwatch play for the Shockwave was what...
That was beautiful.
Essentially
really well done.
Drake. Yeah.
But I mean, I just don't know whether it's going to be enough as Gen.G once again shove out this mid lane, take control of the river. Now going for a bit of a reset here. Life actually makes it back, grabs himself a couple of control wards as, oh my goodness.
Just barely
Sometimes you're just okay, I guess.
Yeah. This keeps happening with these backs in the LCK. Valdez and I had a wonky one the other day with the shield coming through.
Yep.
Sometimes you don't get the interrupt.
Nope.
Don't think they would have gotten the kill there, but it would have been nice to slow that down.
Oh, staggering backs is actually a huge deal around these Baron fights. It's 100% right.
Look at the Ornn ornament starting to come through. Now you have Leandri's Ultimate Depression or whatever it's called.
I think it's Leandri's Lament.
Lament, yes.
I think it might be. But I mean, it's just this. You go through a thesaurus, add Leandri's to the front, and say something sad at the end. That's all 3 of the Leandri's items that have existed. So.
And, you know, as a Sea of Thieves guy, I always call the Kraken Slayer the Megalodon Slayer when we get that upgraded. That's online here now. Like, Gen.G have the pieces of the puzzle. Like, we're starting to hit that late game where, you know, we were talking about what the late game, but the late game, but the late game. But, I mean, we are there now.
Yeah, no, it's happened.
It's happened, and Gen.G have the tools they need to actually crush a front-to-back team fight. And T1 are going to have to try to find one way or the other. But if you make just one mistake against this composition, you get wiped. Full wipe means end of the game.
Oh, absolutely. We are certainly at that territory. The Drake is going to be spawning in 30 seconds. Gen.G at the moment, just milling about mid.
This is the fight T1 have to take. And it's going to be one of many they have to take. But they have to take it in some miraculous way, just like the last one. Clid's looking for Faker. I love Faker's positioning so far. He's always on the flank, drawing Clid's attention away. And he can get a lot of harassed on if he gets away with it.
They do manage to get the Banshee's Veil out of BDD.
If they can find BDD, if he gets cast, I mean, that's one way you win this fight. To get the Banshee's Veil, as you mentioned.
We'll see whether T1 are actually just looking for a trade. They could potentially run at the Baron. There is Severum Crescendum. This is real rough. Ruler's going to go over and try and solo this one out. And we'll see whether Gen.G can play enough defense.
This is so scary here for Gen.G to actually split this up.
Super Mega Death Rocket flying on towards the Baron, Cuz taking a fair bit of damage here. Baron down to about 1,000, and it is secured by T1, but now the fight is on. Rascal doesn't find too much value there, but the Jinx takes down the Aphelios. Olaf, of course, is going to die, and Gen.G get Mountain Soul, give up Baron, but now 2 kills. Will this mean a broken base as Kana is running for the hills? The very terrified Yuumi is exactly how I would be feeling in that circumstance as well, as Glid comes on over. They're looking to try and stagger this one out.
Even the
comes
teleport.
over, and yeah, I just don't think that he's going to stand much of a chance here.
And
no more stopwatch.
They were able to take the Baron, but they weren't able to group on it. And you saw the massive damage coming through onto Cuz there from the Super Mega Death Rocket.
Yeah.
Which is very difficult to say.
I mean, like the Ziggs Jinx combo, just Mega Inferno Bomb, Super Mega Death Rocket, like, there's too many.
Watch this though. T1 are not fully grouped. Faker isn't here, and you see that Kana is on the edge. He's trying to deny them from taking the Baron away, but I think he should have probably been on the bottom side of the fight, trying to make sure they don't get wiped. Like, Teddy is in a Baron pit by himself, and when he's done, this fight is done. And sure, you get the Baron, you trade it here, but the fact that Gen.G were so proactive about getting in there and trying to cut them off, preventing Faker from getting in, is why this play worked. I thought Gen.G was actually taking a huge risk in this because they could have actually just forced the fight on their terms 5v5, and the split gave T1 the opportunity to take a 5v3, but it just didn't work out because Faker couldn't rotate in. Kana was more on deny duty than peel duty, and Teddy just was instantly blown up. And Gen.G now 4-0 in this game. They have the Mountain Soul. And sure, Baron buff, you've got it, but it's a negative power play. And it feels like Gen.G just have the keys to the Nexus at this stage.
Yeah, that is 50 gold that has their name written on it right now. That being said, it being Gen.G's game to win doesn't mean that things are 100% impossible, but it is getting more and more difficult. I just want to say, this is the best I've seen BDD play into Faker in a really long time, even including that series that they managed to win in the qualifier. Sometimes there's just this thing that Faker has that BDD can't seem to shake, right? Ever since, you know, BDD did have that one series back on Longzhu where things were fantastic, but since then, hasn't really felt the same.
Yeah,
and he's been so good this game.
He really has. I mean, there are certain memories that every player will have, and there are certain moments that, you know, some people never recover from. I mean, ask Ryu how he feels about the Zed versus Zed blind pick game. I'm sure every time that highlight
feel
plays,
too uncomfortable.
Yeah,
I
sure,
wouldn't want to ask him.
I'm sure when he hears Doa's casting, because I'm sure he's even heard that. Like it echoes through his memory. But I mean, there are some players that just are bad matchups against others. But in this case, it doesn't feel that way. BDD has handled this game so extremely well, and it's a 4-kill game. It's a 4-kill game at 32 minutes and 20 seconds here. And it's just been Gen.G having such an early tempo advantage with a comp that scales better, and against a comp that has no agency to initiate and try to stop this runaway train that's off the rails now. Yeah. And Gen.G with all this extra shielding makes it even more difficult for T1 to potentially pick someone. They have such a great front line. It just feels that in this game, Gen.G are so inevitable. T1 have no options here. They're going to hope for another team fight, but that's all they've got. That's their one last chance on this Elder Drake.
But I mean, even if that happens, right, like Mountain Soul, Ornn that's given literally everything away possible outside of the Chem Tank upgrade, and of course, the newly completed item for life in his Sunfire Aegis. He's finally got that one as well. Like, this game just, like, the power level, like, you can see it's like a 3,000 gold lead, right? But with all of the ornaments that are now put together, it's like an extra, what, 4,000 odd gold in stats. Mountain Soul, add another 4,000 odd gold in stats.
It's like a Tom Kinch comp too, like who are you gonna get?
Yeah, yeah, and then also factor in the champions at this stage of the game, and maybe that equates to like a 6,000 gold advantage. So now when you see T1 fighting back, like, it's not what is 3,000 at the top of the screen. It feels more like 15.
And there's been a huge talk of, okay, well, maybe this is Dominant not looking as dominant as last year. A lot of people have been saying that. LCK looks like a one-team region.
No one's saying that after yesterday, my dude.
I hope not. But, I mean, look, this is our other semifinal here, and these two teams are almost so perfect that, you know, like, this is such a low-kill game. And the fact that T1 have had the real conservative play slow nature here and have not panicked means that they still have a chance in this game, because if they fail any other panicked attempt to deny a Drake, for example, they lose a long time ago. Like, the Nexus would be down, or Gen G would have a 10,000 gold lead right now, and we'd be just, playing off, T1 here. But they still have a chance in this game because they still have one 5v5 team fight where, yes, they are behind, yes, the ornaments are up, and yes, the Mountain Soul is there, but there's still a chance. The fact that we can say that, I think, is testament alone to T1, their fortitude in this first game in this best of 5.
Gen G just haven't been making their characteristic mistakes that they often do into T1. They haven't been acting on the pressure. They've been playing patient. They've been playing back. They've read their composition, understood their win conditions, and played towards them. And that's continuing to happen right now. They are ripe for a caster curse, and I want to apologize if that does happen, as Hook going to go wide onto Rascal.
I mean, look at T1's positioning here. How will they ever close in on this Drake? Gen G probably shouldn't overextend here, though.
Yeah, Rascal actually is going to go golden. Tries to start this one as Moonlight Vigil actually going to get trolled a little bit there by Canna's Cars. And the health bars on T1 go down low, but no one is actually taken out. Also, not a lot of R buttons down, as it's only Super Mega Death Rocket that's been picked up. That's not one of the CCs that they require. As watch the orb, watch BDD's power in this fight as T1 have been torn apart. Canna now off towards the side, and Ruler does so much damage with all the items he's put together. 4,000 already in this fight.
You chip the health, you get your shield back. That's what Gen G is doing here, but T1 have handled this so well. They're actually getting Drake priority right now on the Elder Drake. Teddy, where are you going?
Oh, what is that? Don't face check! No! Well, he does take the Lantern, survives for the moment. Now Lantern on cooldown. The Elder has been pulled out. Rift Scuttler is going to fall immediately. As Rascal down to 50%. Canna off towards the side. Finally shown on vision as Faker flashes before the Lantern comes out. Now both on cooldown for the moment.
Rascal has to play back now. He's going to have to teleport back in. T1 now or never.
Oh my goodness, the Super Mega Death Rocket. That means the bottom lane are out of this one. There is no way T1 can fight his Elder Drake for Gen G. War of Attrition won by the red team.
And that might just be game here, Atlas. You can see Abyssal Voyage forward. They want to catch Kana. He has to ult out. But the base is about to be unlocked.
Yeah, BDD didn't actually know which way he wanted to go. The first missed shockwave for him is going to get a flash, and Kana is going to survive.
And this is going to be a Baron easily here for Gen G. They get a pick or two there. They can just walk down the red carpet. But this Baron buff is going to roll it out for them. They're going to have all waves pushing. Even Rascal goes topside here after the reset and is going to be able to get that lane pressured. But you can see Gen G, their composition also struggles to have insane engage outside of the shockwave. But this is a fight for T1 that they're just fighting with half health bars on their main carry because he face checked moments before. The Super Mega Death Rocket comes through here and just forces him out.
Oh my god, no! What? That's the brush he got caught in to lose the 92-minute game!
Oh no. Well,
oh god, no!
Some memories coming back, Atlas.
Yeah?
Gen G trying to make some new memories in this best of 5. And that is almost certainly going to be the last nail in the coffin here, as we're going to watch this one more time. Just extremely far forward here is Faker. And for what?
Yeah, it's so
That's
strange.
so peculiar. I mean, they had a Lantern nearby, but why make this choice? Didn't even drop a ward, wasn't even clearing vision.
The thing that's really difficult, right, is that T1 are actually, like, they've missed their windows. Their windows were very narrow this game, composition-wise, but they've missed them. So that is not that egregious, but that is a huge uncharacteristic mistake for Faker, as Nexus turret number 1 is going to go down. BDD flashes forward, gets another flash for his shockwave. Ornhorn does go a little bit wide there as Canna breaks up the fight, but Rascal looks basically unkillable, just goes in and solos Teddy. Now Carrier and Canna have no damage. Faker finally turns up, but Ruler is an absolute monster. Carrier comes on in, that's a very angry dragon, and the Nexus will fall. Gen G take game number 1, and we've got one hell of a best of 5 on our hands.
And it's a game of inches, not miles. It's a game of slow-paced, steady wins the race here for Gen G. T1 with another scaling comp, but theirs didn't scale as well, and they fell behind in the tempo. It felt like every single play, every single moment that that Gen G had to set up there was so well played. They played proactively around the timings of the Drake. And I gotta say, this was a fantastic game for Gen G. They had every single moment planned out, start to finish. They played it. The most impressive moment, arguably, was when they gave up that Drake. And when they just said, you know what, T1, you can have this, but we already have everything else. And they never gave T1 that opportunity to win one team fight. It's the
patient play. It's the patient play that Gen.G haven't been able to do. I feel like they look desperate sometimes, and they did in their last series against T1. That was gone here. This was the juggernaut Gen.G that drafted better. Like, they see T1's draft, they're like, oh, you've got an Olaf and then a whole bunch of like champions that want to play mid to late game. All right, I guess we'll just play ultra late game and we'll beat you inevitably as we get to that moment. And you saw, that was exactly how it played out. And when Gen.G thought that there was an opportunity for them to throw, they back away.
Yeah.
They say, it doesn't matter, we're still gonna be able to win. That is not what we've been seeing from this team. That was not what we saw last time these two teams clashed. And that was sort of at the beginning of this particular roster of T1. They came in, it was like Faker and the gang are like, we know how to dismantle Gen.G. Have a look, you guys sitting on the bench. This is how it's done. They did it. They ripped them apart. This was very different.
This is very different. This is a very, slow playing Gen.G, and you play this grueling best of 5 too against T1. Gen.G have experience with this style of play, as you pointed out. Feels like old Gen.G. You just slow down this best of 5, but now you've got that momentum advantage. Now you have that tempo advantage, and this is not going to be the blowout 3-0 T1. We know that for sure, and that's very exciting.
Well, we'll see whether there's a blowout on the other side. That's still possible, theoretically. Let's have a look at the post-game breakdown to see where all of the damages did come from. I imagine Faker still did a fair bit of work, as you can see there. But this one's all about Ruler as far as damage goes. I want to shout out B2D. I think that his shockwaves were pivotal in the early to mid game, and what this Gen.G comp does is it enables Ruler in the late game, and this is exactly how this damage graph is supposed to look.
The one time Gen.G had to give up the Drake was because his shockwave was stopwatched. Like, the one time he couldn't get insane value was the only team fight that Gen.G didn't take, right? Like, that goes to show how pivotal he was in every single moment. Getting those tempo advantages, threatening the kill on Faker, getting that Drake priority, all on the Orianna into the Victor. BDD looked Faker in the eyes, the unkillable Demon King, and said, not today. 1-0 start here for Gen.G. What a great best of 5 we have up ahead of us.
Well, I just hope that we see some differences. I can't wait for the adaptation in the draft. But ladies and gentlemen, we have to have a short break. When we get back, we'll hear what the analysts have to say. And then game number 2. Don't go anywhere.
나온다 앞에 쪽.
오케이. 앞에 로플.
가자 이거.
태연아 맞춰서
우리
와줘.
밑에다 돌아서 와.
맞춰서 와줘.
칸카 이거 칸카. 그럴 게 없고.
천천히 보자. 얘 딜 못 버틸 거야?
탑으로 가는 중.
야, 셋 잡았어. 아, 뭐, 감이 있다.
일 딸피.
이번에 공을 한번 줄게.
밀어내야 돼.
앞에.
오케이, 앞에 로플.
타워.
타워 때리면서 와. 타워 때리면서 와.
아니야, 천천히.
천천히.
천천히 와.
앞에 잡았어.
나이스.
앞에부터. 올라프. 나이스.
여기 받을게.
세우게. 밑으로 마무리. 다 죽여.
가리고. 나이스.
오케이, 다음까지 가자.
오케이.
최대한 스킬샷 덜 맞으면서 나름 분노 관리.
일단 수면 거지가 많이 절반 정도 깎였고요.
수면 맞으면
들어가나요? 소담을 빨아들이면 파우투!
이게 한 방에 터졌어요.
파울을 제거!
그러면서 그리고 밀고 들어가는 발사이 살아있는데요.
나머지는 어떤가요?
이거 솔카도 위험하고.
결식도!
와, 저 들어가면은
솔카 제거! T1!
그리고
결국은
레오나가 들어가면서 또 출시계 활용까지.
한 번만 더 잡나요?
이러면 왔다 갔다 드리블.
잡아냈습니다. 결국은 포시까지 잡아내서
이동하며 에이스. 안 된 상태에서 대놓고 한타 열릴 수도 있거든요.
그냥 풀대 풀이거든요.
네.
그리고 뒤에 공간에
먼저 풀겠다.
일단은 아래쪽에 오기로 왔어요.
아래가 오기 전에
싸움을
먼저
먼저
걸리자.
아니 그리고 DRX의 굉장히 감정적인
포시비엄
나래가 오기 전에.
포시 끊겼고요.
나래가 오기 전에. 그 나래가 뚜벅뚜벅.
지금
나래가
나래가
오거든요. 나래가 와서 이렇게 되면.
페이까지 생존하고
그래서
그리고 페이커 생존한다. T1 캐리야. 언급하신 것처럼 그걸 기반으로 해서 T1이 최근에 연승의 기운을 더 이어나갔었는데
네, 헤카림도 뛰어와요. 네, 헤카림 뛰어와요.
성공을 나타났는데 그 전에
헤카림 뛰어와요.
우와!
간다!
근데 돌아가기는 어렵지 않을까요?
전면 거치 그래.
오,
상태이긴 한데 이게 뭐
고통스러워요. 고통스러워요.
뭐가 뚫리고 날아오고
그래서 한번 살려봐요.
지금까지 지금 나온 게 아니라서
캐리야 그런데 이미 캐릭이 너무 많아요.
체력 관리 보세요. 체력 관리.
데미지가 너무 많아요.
T1
더블킬 이후에 여기서 킹겐도 사라집니다.
간다 익산 플레이오프 2라운드로 그렇죠. 네. 이제 다음 턴이네요. 다음 턴. 이제는 딜러가 이거 달라붙으면서 일단 BDD 쪽이라도. 네, BDD 토끼. 잡았습니다. 잡아서 싸워야 돼. 상대가 지갑에 돈이 많거든요. 네. 다음에 뒤로 좀 빠지면서 오물만 나와야 돼. 오물 갔다 오면. 오물 갔다 오면. 그렇죠. 오물 갔다가 멈디 빨리. 여기서 다시 한번 오물 끼고 가야지. 그러면 떴는 돌아 부르지 말고. 와 라이프. 못 이렇게 잘 뛰면 퍼드랍게. 야 펜타고. 이거 들어가서. 펜타케. 이건 담장 나이프가 길막고 같이 구경하겠는데요. 네. 근데 이게 지금 정글로가 멀어서 판테온이 뭐 낙하할 게 아니면 낙하 잔치 어림없다. 그래 한타를 봐야 돼. 클리드 어차피 소녀 때문에 지금 젠지 움직임 보면 바로 버스 그리고 안면 강타에 배달까지 라이프 벌리고 있어. 카이사 발사! 와, 바로 라이프의 움직임! 좋아! 에이스 트리플 킬! 배달 말도 안 됐죠? 에이스! 딱 뜨네요. 젠지의 막강한 힘. 자, 바로 3천! 와, 밀어내면서 천만다행이죠. 아, 바론도 도와주고 있고요. 일단 바론은 왜 이렇게 바론 버튼 들어가. 이거까지 막자 진짜 미쳤어요. 혼자 다 해먹죠. 그것도 큰 변수예요. 특히 장로는. 볼까요 그럼요. 장로는 먹은 쪽이 한타를 일방적으로 이겨서 그렇죠. 끝나요. 젠지가 결국은 기가 막히게 마무리 짓는 모습이죠. 네.
Hello and welcome back everybody to the LCK Analyst Desk for the second round of the playoffs. And today we'll be joined by 정현이, Victory, and Gorilla. We're having a banger series between Gen.G and T1, a very long rivalry between two teams, and the winner will be heading into the finals, and Gen.G was able to take game number 1. Both teams prioritized their bottom lane a lot, so this time around, once again, they were focusing on the pick heading to the bottom lane. Yeah, they were definitely playing around their bottom lane. They have Teddy, they have Ruler, so they were playing around the objectives a lot, and they were drafting around their AD carry picks as well. Thresh is known to be the best pick here in the meta, so they first picked Thresh, and then Gen.G was able to kind of mitigate that force with Jinx together with Tomkench. And with the early gank, Aphelios and Thresh was not able to hit the power spike when they wanted to, which means Gen.G will be empowered even stronger. T1, the only picks that had agency to make early game actions was Thresh together with Aphelios, and Orianna and Victor was just kept having trade on the mid lane. So with the early game action happening from Gen.G, well, T1 lost their agency, and when the mid laner was hitting their power spike, Gen.G's player was rotating towards the mid lane in order to enable BDD's power. Looking at Victor and Olaf, we have always mentioned that Olaf kind of buys time for Victor to scale, but Orianna and Udyr is something else. They have a strong synergy. They can look for early game actions. For example, with the Orianna Orb, Udyr can run into the enemies and he can pick up kills. And at the same time, they can support their AD carry to carry the late game. So even though Zoe was available, it was really smart call coming out from Gen.G to lock down that Orianna instead. Now let's take a look at this first highlight where Gen.G was able to pick up a very first kill and then rotate towards the early Herald. T1 really wanted to compensate the loss they had in the early game fight happening on the bottom lane, so they were forcing this Herald try. So Orianna didn't do much work, but she got every work done because Orianna has full control of a narrow landscapes. You know, you cannot just walk past that area when Orianna is guarding there. So with her presence, Victor and Thresh got completely zoned out, and the top side was taken over by Gen.G too. So Gen.G even secured the Herald, and they were able to walk away without losing anything. And then so Jinx was able to also pick up all the waves that was about to get shoved under the turret. It was not about the mistake coming out from the individuals. It was more like Gen.G's intelligent macro decision, especially around that Orianna. They were able to control that area around the Herald. I think T1 definitely had the power spike to take teamfight at that point in the game, but Gen.G was able to just control the fight really well, utilizing the power that they had with the champion picks. And that's where everything started. T1 was not able to come online because of that loss of the early Herald, and then Gen.G was having a full control till the very end. So let's take a look at this second highlight. It was a Dragon Soul time for Gen.G, and Orianna always had the orb on a very significant area, so T1 had no chance to make their way down to the Drake. So T1 looked to trade it with the Baron, but Gen.G's comp had Tomkench and Jinx. At that point in game, Jinx can solo the Drake, and then they can utilize the Tomkench ult to make a cross-map rotation, and then Ruler used the ultimate to scan the Baron Baron HP, and she was also able to effectively chunk down the opponent's HP. And then we could see a slight mistake coming out from Kana here as well. But even though Udyr was not able to steal away that Baron, but still Gen.G was in a very huge lead in order to take that Baron fight. Gen.G was not in a rush at all, but T1, they really needed to interrupt the Dragon Soul coming out from Gen.G. T1 was trying really hard to find any kind of window to take the game around, but Gen.G was so solid. And BDD will pick up that POG on Orianna performance. Very low DPM, to be honest, but he was getting all the work done in order to help Gen.G reach the kill perfect game in game number 1. Gen.G always had Orianna to control the landscape and not allowing T1 to reach to the Gen.G players. Orianna, it was really significant looking at the marksman picks here, because this champion can do massive damage, but at the same time, this champion can protect her AD carry. On a similar point of view, Victor is also really good because he can just one-shot marksman in the late game, but still Orianna was there very reliably for Ruler to flash on forward and pick up the kills in the end. Well, BDD, even though he didn't put a lot of damage, still it's really his duty in this game in order to enable Ruler to carry the late game. So he was able to pick up the POG with this performance. And this is 4th kill perfect game from Gen.G throughout the split. I think they are keeping their momentum coming from the last year's regional qualifier. So let's check out whether T1 can stop their momentum.
Thank you so much, Jisun, as usual, for the translation of the analyst desk, and welcome back. It is time for game number 2, and I think that the thing on everyone's mind is draft.
Yes.
Will T1 continue on this downward trend when it comes to a lot of their drafts that they've had? I think in their Hummer Life series, that first draft was so beautiful. You know, the debut of the Volley Bear jungle. And at that point in time, I was like, oh, okay, this is T1 ramping up. But since then, even in game number 2, they reverted back to, you know, the Victor Kaiser, you know, 11.5, very beginning type draft, right? It's a little bit prehistoric. It's not really what we want to be seeing from this team, especially right now. We need to be pushing the envelope and creating opportunities instead of defaulting back to things that may have worked in the past, but often against weaker teams that you can just outplay and be better than.
Yeah.
That is not Gen.G.
I think that at this stage, like, this is, you know, the final boss is Damwon Kia, right? But sometimes when you play a game, like, the final boss is hard, but the boss before is the hardest one, you know, where you struggle the most. And then when you get to the final boss, you know, you've upgraded, you've grinded, you have all your extra equipment. I feel like in this case, you know, T1 have to prove against this really strong opponent that they can actually hang in terms of drafting, because sometimes it feels like T1's draft identity is 2 half measures, half early game, half late game. The Victor picks we've been seeing from Faker feel like insurance rather than a solid plan or theme. And when you play against a draft like Gen.G's in Game 1, where their draft was just more all-in on later scaling, because they had that 5th pick Ornn, you just really have a big problem. And I think T1's identity for most of the season, especially when they were playing a lot of closer, was extreme early game control. And when you're playing Faker, it's a little bit tougher to draft that way, especially when you're not playing one or either. That was the duo, you know, that we had where they really went all in on early game control. But you can't half do it either here with these drafts we're seeing. You have to go, I want to say, not all in, but you really have to commit one way or the other, because Gen.G's drafting is so wide. Like, they have such wide champion pools outside of BDD, so you really have to be careful.
And also their styles, right? Gen.G have played fast League of Legends throughout this season, not as much, and towards the end they've moved back to this classic Gen.G scaling style. They never got the stigma off, right? I think everyone at home is like, oh, Gen.G Resident Sleeper, the classic. But Gen.G did try faster styles, right? We had Clid and Rascal playing the Renekton Nidalee duo extraordinarily well. And you can see Gen.G actually going to be banning the Renekton and taking Kalista for their first pick.
What a
Hecarim
weird...
was definitely obvious, but
yeah,
man, this is crazy.
I mean, the Hecarim ban comes through, you see the Kalista first pick here, but this is over, for example, a Thresh that was also open. You know, they could have taken that. There was so many champions open here that Gen.G could have taken instead, and they prioritized the Kalista. I'm really curious to see how this goes. We saw some...
Oh, wow.
Well, here's the thing, like, now you just go straight into Senna Kench, and this is what so many teams have been scared about, not just against T1, basically all of our top 4 teams. You don't want to let Deft play the Senna. You don't want to let Teddy play the Senna.
I
you don't
think
want Ghost to play
Teddy's
the Senna.
the scariest. Teddy is 100% the scariest in my opinion, and I'm actually amazed that Senna went all the way through the draft last time around, but thinking about it, the Thresh was first picked, right? And so you then have to take away the Jinx because that's the best option alongside it, and so they didn't really have an opportunity to do so. The denial sort of got in the way, so now T1 had the perfect opportunity to get there. It's the Kalista set on the bottom side of the map, certainly an opportunity for Gen G to demonstrate why this Kalista is banned so much against Ruler.
And it's also a ranged jungle that comes with it. The Graves here for Clid gives them a lot of power on the bottom side of the map. You can actually force those kills. You can get down Tom Catcher Center extremely low, then collateral damage for the finishing blow. Something like a Nidalee has a similar amount of power in terms of her ability to finish kills with a spear. She's ranged, but the Graves here just really screams that Gen G are really going to put a lot of resources in shutting down this Senna Tom Kench, and it feels like that was their plan from the beginning with this first pick Kalista. Nidalee is going to be the response here from T1, and now the question becomes, what does T1 want to have as their anchor on the top side? Because, you know, if you're going to have a somewhat volatile bottom matchup that you need to scale very well, are you going to try to pull resources to the top side of the map, or do you just want to scale up and play for later? That's the questions that T1 are going to answer in these next few moments.
I actually think that T1, if they have like a mitigating draft for the rest of it, right, like just try and keep your lanes tidy and keep things together, Teddy Senna will carry in the late game. I think there's almost no doubt there, especially with augmentation of things like Primal Surge coming out from Cuz, and they can set up around objectives quite comfortably utilizing the spears, and if Cuz is able to actually land a few God tier ones, then you know, there could be an opportunity there. So
especially, yeah, I mean, if you hit a few spears, like Senna is just so powerful. She hits one auto on anyone who's at half health, and they're just out of the fight.
Yeah, and also slowed, so maybe dead. Like,
yeah,
it's very scary.
See the Sylas ban here, which has been very commonly used as a counterpick to the Seraphine, but also to Gnar. And
yeah, true.
I feel like Gen G have an opportunity to pick Gnar themselves here into this draft.
Well, they would if it was not banned.
Oh, I forgot that's banned. Yeah, my bad.
Yeah, kinda deserves Gnar first bans these days, as the Aatrox also going to be taken away from him.
The Sylas ban is kind of peculiar in that regard, actually, you know, here for Gen G, against Gen G here. And if... well, I guess we're going to see maybe an extreme poke-heavy comp here from T1.
I actually don't mind it.
You go all in on this, and it does become very strong if you can have a stable early game.
Because they already have the disengage from Tom Kench, right? So this could work.
And it's a very low-range comp for Gen G. Like, Set has to run at this. You have Kalista, who's very low range in general in terms of team fight. She's not going to be able to do consistent damage. And the Scion here is very interesting. It's extremely stable, blind. And you have now the Syndra here for PDD. It's been his most played champion. But you're so reliant on really strong engage from Sia and Syndra in the late game. This is a very different style of composition from Gen G, where they're going to fall off really hard in the late game, whereas T1 have so much poke. If they can get vision control, I mean, look, if you go Jace, you have so much poke, it's actually insane. Like, could this be any more poke?
No, I don't think so. unless you play like a poke support. I don't know which poke support you put in the bottom lane alongside a center, but you could theoretically do that. Yeah, this is going to be the Jace into the Scion, and is a difficult one for Scion to deal with. Early, I think that T1 are going to have a lot of control at the earlier stages of the game. I think there is a bit of onus on BDD to get his mid lane under wraps and allow Clid to get around his jungle and possibly mitigate the push that Can is going to put out, because topside is certainly going to be where T1 can focus. They don't have a lot of CC to augment this. However, Scion is a lumbering gentleman up there. Hitting him with a spear is easier than a lot of other champions.
Yeah, I really like T1's draft way more than Gen G's here, Atlas. I feel like their comp is so good at team fighting later on with the poke. We know that Zoe is one of Faker's better champions this year. I mean, he's had one of his most famous team fights this season on the champion, and this is a play style where T1 can really showcase their identity as a team. You know, you have Teddy Senna, you have Zoe for Faker, and Kana gets to play an aggressive top matchup where he's just shooting at a tank, and that makes it very stable for him, and they can have kill pressure up there, they can draw a lot of the attention away. I feel like Gen G really need to make something happen early with Ruler's Kalista here. They really need to control the bot side, try to maybe even snowball that into an advantage, but I feel like that's going to be so difficult here. With Tom Kench being played by Keria, how do you really find those angles? I mean, it's an early game that's strong for Kalista, but can you really push that into an advantage enough to get you ahead to snowball this game? The Sion pick in particular just feels like it really isn't going to thematically go with the rest of this team later on in the game.
Yeah, Sion certainly is sort of their scaling option here, but gives them hard engage, and Gen.G needs hard engage if they're going to take down T1. This has to be decisive from Gen.G. What did we see last game? We saw slow, we saw come to us, and then maybe we'll fight, but actually we probably won't, and then we'll win the game. I actually think this is really smart from T1 as an adaptation to say, like, well, if you do just want to group up around objectives and then do nothing, we're going to throw a whole bunch of abilities at you, and then you're going to have to leave.
Yeah, and it's also a comp that's so strong against a high-priority Callista pick. And, you know, the power of Callista is in when she gets ahead and then she dominates those mid-game fights, the first few Drake fights in particular, the Rift Herald, she's able to get in on that fight. That's where she's going to be at her strongest. Senna takes a lot more time to come online. But the difference in what those two AD carries can do in a 25-minute, 30-minute fight is so massively different. I mean, the range that Senna has, the poke that she can play with, means that Ruler is going to be dead oftentimes before he can even get in range to auto. If he gets hit by any of the Shock Blast, Spear, Battle Stars, right? Like, it's very scary what Gen.G are going to have to try to put together if we do go to late game where they're even or behind.
Well, bit of a battle here around this bottom brush. We've seen this everywhere. It just feels like everyone just wants to be fighting over bottom brushes. As Facebreaker onto Carrier. His life, he's going to move real fast with his phase rush and get himself out of the way.
Teddy is undefeated, and Carrier is undefeated as well on the spot duo, by the way.
Yeah, this combo is pretty gross. And Carrier actually 100% POG rate as well for his Tom Kench.
2 for 2.
Which is pretty nutty.
It's pretty POG, you could even say.
You could definitely say that. It is very player of the game.
Yep.
As, Ruler and Life should certainly have some control in the early stage.
Yes.
Like you say, I think the power of inevitability is on T1's side. Despite the fact that it's a poke comp, we talk about poke comps pretty gingerly oftentimes because they do take a lot of finesse to play correctly. But T1, if they've showed anything, it's that even with bad drafts, they often find victories just because they are very good, even when they have narrow win conditions. As Faker takes a bit of damage there from B2D. B2D doing that Syndra thing where you use all of your mana in order to get the shove.
I feel like if there's almost anyone you can trust too, this is a kind of a vacuum matchup that isn't going to matter too much.
I think Khan has maybe messed this matchup up as well because he just wins these.
Yeah.
And sometimes he's not supposed to. His Haymaker there, Life keeping himself alive. As level 2 gained by Gen.G, and that means that they were able to get a bit of extra control.
I do agree with you in that T1 have, you know, been able to pull off really, really hard to execute comps in the past. But I mean, historically as an org, I mean, if you go back to the beginning of T1, back in the All Champions, right? Like, this team made a name for themselves for doing that. Faker made a name for himself for pulling off extreme plays, and he's done it already this season on the Zoe. If there's one player you can trust to hit the Battle Stars when it matters most in the best of 5, I mean, I think it's Faker, right? And this bot lane is going as expected. No surprises there. That's the power of this Callista pick.
Yeah.
You know, is this enough? I mean, you need to find more than just pushing waves into turrets.
Yeah, I think I have to go back to, you know, some of the old adages when it comes to, you know, Senna X, you know, the fasting Senna compositions, because we often saw them with, like, you hit a mid-game and if your support is down 20 CS, you're psyched. You're still in a great spot, right? And as, you know, late game comes around, of course, you know, the Flame Horizon inevitably comes in, but you get so much value out of the combo that it is just really good. Last time Teddy and Carrier played this, it was against Harmon Life Esports, and they won the lane, which didn't make any sense.
Yes, no, it did not.
That's not happening this time.
No.
However, it doesn't mean that things are necessarily bad for T1. That's just how this is supposed to go, especially against the early game power of a Callisto.
Yeah, it's extremely powerful with the Graves jungle too. You know, as we were mentioning, you have the ability to really follow up on some of those hard engages post 6 and secure kills. That's what a ranged support is going to give you in this situation, more than say like an Udyr might. That's the one thing that's missing here for T1. We've seen so many Udyrs with the Zoe because it gives you such vision control. Lily's not bad at that, and especially into a Grave, she can be quite good as hold that thought.
Yeah, Carrier taking a lot of damage here. Taken down low, has to use the exhaust to get Ruler out of it. Now Teddy able to follow up very nicely. Rend just to say no to Carrier, as the Pierce not going to do too much there, but here in this lane, right, Carrier can get all of his health back relatively comfortably. There is a Piercing Darkness to help him out there, and Gen.G a little bit more difficult to do so. We'll see whether T1 can utilize this as more of these little engages do happen. That being said, that 20 CS gap is already here at 5 minutes.
Yeah,
and
it
that's
could only
not
get,
exactly the timing we wanted.
Yeah, it might even get worse. Let's look at this face breaker.
Yeah, two-man face breaker. Carrier in a little bit of trouble. Actually gets haymade as well.
Even going to come at the
Ooh, that was close. As now we're looking to try and get this dive onto Rascal. He flashes. Turret aggro picked up by Cuz and held onto absolutely beautifully. Great gank up there, and we mentioned that T1 playing around topside should be an inevitability, and so far very successful.
And they're playing around it so well. I mean, this bottom side of the map is super threatening for Gen G, but you're not actually getting kills. You are going to get a Drake out of this, and even with a little bit of mid control here for Faker, there's just no way that they can punish this. But the trade again here with 6 up.
Yep, Canner actually only needs a Shock Blast and an auto, and he's just dead. Maybe just an Empowered Shock Blast. That was on cooldown, though, and now Rascal's going to go home again.
He lost his flash. He has to go home. He doesn't have the teleport anymore, and this is going to be the beginning of a massive lead for Kana. I mean, obviously the Jace pick was really the beginning of that, but we're getting a little bit deeper here.
Yeah.
I mean, this game is going very much according to plan for T1 outside of that first Drake. And I think you're okay with that, because you give the Drake up, but your comp is going to fight so much better on the upcoming objectives that what are you even worried about with that one?
Oh, Gen G, I think their spidey senses are tingling just a little bit here, understanding that there could be just another visit towards the top side. Rascal desperately trying to get towards his turret. Spear is going to miss, and Rascal's now just hopefully trying to deal with these minions. Oh no, knockup does land onto Cuz. He's still got turret aggro, but he's able to hop out of the way to the skies from Canna. He has to flash. Is he just dead? No! Gets the level up just in time.
I was going to look for one more spear. It's not over yet.
Oh, Rascal's going to get out of the way. Soul Furnace back available once again, and now Klid's finally going to move on up.
And that was very well played. Very well played from Rascal. A little bit of extra turret aggro there on a Cuz as Teddy.
Yep, a little bit of a snare there onto life. Haymaker, though, keeps himself relatively healthy.
Well, a lot of the tempo advantage they had on the top side of the map was lost with this extension that cost Kana his flash. Cuz keeps his, at least, is able to get away with that one. But that was definitely a huge moment for Rascal to take Kana's flash away and to take a breath. He's still behind, obviously, and this is still not going to be a happy time, but it could have just been completely over. Like, that could have been almost game-ending if they get another kill there. They get to faster Eclipse, and we've seen this before.
Yeah, and then Canna can group up, and the Shockwave's, a 2-shot on some of these carries from Gen G. That's when things get extraordinarily scary.
That's when you can never win any of the upcoming objective fights.
Yeah.
When T1 have really turned this bot lane around, it's really stabilized quite significantly down here. The 6 is coming up in just a moment.
Yep, CS is still certainly going to be a control from Ruler, but you saw how the trades are working, right? Like, what Senator Kench does is it alleviates pressure. Like, that is what it's so good at.
Look at this.
And Teddy and Carrier have been very good at it so far this season.
Look at this roam, too, from Klid. Like, that was right when Ruler was hitting 6. You have the Fate's Call. It was a really good opportunity. If T1 stayed for extra, one more second, try to get an extra plate, you actually punish that and get kills. But T1, they know the timing. They back away at the perfect moment. They get to crash the wave. And unfortunately, all that Klid's going to get is a ward removed and a control ward placed.
Does give them a little bit more safety here, and bottom side vision certainly available for Gen G as Cuz comes on over and kills Klid's Blast Cone, but Klid not looking too upset about it. He's kind of taking a bit of damage here towards the top side after the trade. And let's see whether Rascal can stabilize. It has been certainly in his wheelhouse, as now Cuz starting up the Rift Herald.
Look at the timing of this too.
Yeah, right.
Teddy gets in, out of vision. He is just seen. Pings come down. Klid cannot contest. He's going to look for a smite steal.
Oh, okay. That's not, he just walks up to it and says thanks. Okay, well, that's one way of losing the Rift Herald.
That's unbelievable.
They can get the eye though.
That's unbelievable that happened, Atlas. Like, he actually just walks up and takes it.
Yeah, Cuz gonna have to try and get out of the way here as Klid. BDD finally there. The train leaves the station. I don't think anyone... Oh, yes, it was. So the drive-by collection of the eye was successful there for Rascal. And he wants this, right? He wants to be able to get that plate gold so this Scion can reach relevance a whole lot earlier.
It was really important to actually get that early on. And this is actually a tightrope that Klid walked. I mean, we talk about professional League of Legends as being a very calculated game, but when you're actually able to just know that you can walk forward and hope for a 50-50 smite steal to then fight for an Eye of the Herald, you know that your comp is going to struggle in the regular team fight, but you could still steal that away. That's very impressive judgment here from Gen G. It was fairly low risk, right? And the reward is extremely high.
Oh, yeah.
Really appreciate to see that
T1
play.
were 50-50ing, and Gen G are like, well, I'll take those odds if you guys are going to do all the damage.
Yeah, if you're going to do the heavy lifting, sure, why not?
Yeah, straight up.
And it was a really good rotation, too, from T1. You know, they had Teddy there first. They started it early, but Gen G does really good game sense, play it out, and Clid's able to take some of that fire away.
Yeah.
I'll watch this one more time. Just walks up. Again, if you turn on Clid here, it becomes a more complicated problem. He just walks up and gets it, kind of all-ins, but he's able to get over the wall. Super easy, quick draw out. And then if you're T1 here, you're like, well, I feel like I need to make sure that they don't get this Rift Herald. They can't even deny that. They force a flash, Rascal does. I mean, this could not have gone better for Gen G.
Absolutely not. That is 100% stabilization here. No kill, of course. T1 still the only ones with that one, but it's onto the Scion, who's just happily mitigating as much pressure as he can. And now Rift Herald can be utilized. T1 getting a bit of a shove here on the top side of the map. We'll give some opportunities here for Gen G to possibly find some aggression bottom side, as our Ruler is going to be also gifted some of this plate gold.
Yeah, there's just no way you can mitigate this, and they also have the Rift Herald drop. They're going to try to turn this into a Drake play as well. Like, it feels like Gen G are just out-macroing here. The value Teddy's getting on the top side is extremely mitigated. Even now with BDD showing up, he's going to get even less. This is definitely a trade that you want to take as Gen G. Is it good enough for their composition later on? It's hard to say right now. It's hard to judge. But with the 2 Drake advantage, the extra gold that's given over to Ruler now, I mean, it's about as good as it gets without having racked up several kills. I mean, with 0 kills, I think this is the biggest advantage you could really hope for. Gen G really not losing out on a whole lot here. Question is, will it be enough?
Earth, Wind, and Fire comes in as it's of course Cloud Soul. You're welcome, everyone. I sort of took a bit of a timeout in the first game. Just wanted to give you guys a more fun soul. But now, finally, I do have to do what I do, which is Cloud Souls.
Could be a long series, you know. It could be more opportunities for you to give us more.
Yeah, no, I think so too. I think there is certainly a chance here. As T1, they're only down 100 gold, and scaling is a weird conversation to have. These are 2 very different comps, right?
Yes.
Like, last game, it was 2 scaling comps, one of them scaled gooder, right?
Yeah, it was kind of a A rank versus S rank scaling.
Yeah, and so both of them are trying to do the same thing, which means then the comp that does it better is going to win, right? This isn't as cut and dry. This is T1 with a poke composition. They want to set up, they want to avoid Gen G's engage, and then make it so that their health bars are too low for them to continue fighting. They also then have infinite scaling on center, so that's definitely good value for them too. However, that's not the identity of the composition. Gen G, though, they do have a hell of a lot of engage options, right? They can drive a train in, they can search for Scatter the Weaks, and also Life can flank and go for really crazy engages and then just get Fates called out, right? They have a lot of ability to cause a ruckus. They just have to do it. And that's not what Gen G have been doing so far this season.
Yeah, they have not. But this is a really different style of drafting, as you said. And what's really cool about the 2 Drake lead is it means some of those... does. All right. Okay, just a little scuffle there.
Yeah.
Well,
that's making a scary amount of damage.
Yeah, I was like a little bit worried for a second. But what's really interesting is that because Gen G have these 2 Drakes in the lead, and the fact that it's a Cloud Soul, so it's not that significant in terms of the control, like, how much does T1 really have to commit to these upcoming Drake fights? Because normally, if you have 2 Drakes, you're starting to feel really worried as T1. You're starting to feel like the clock is ticking, and you need to start utilizing your scaling. And the fact that Gen G had these really early is somewhat worrying in a different scenario, but because it's Cloud, I feel like T1 have a little bit more wiggle room as Kana really wants this plate.
Yeah, he's pretty desperate.
He's going to get it too.
Yep, finds it, but, you know, he's going to get decimatingly smashed. There's a breeze in the area, gets the flash out from Kana. That one was free. There's now Clid coming on over. He's going to get distracted by a control ward. And you can see the tides are starting to turn, it feels.
Have to check on the accounting team whether that plate was worth the flash trade.
Yeah.
How much flashes are going for these days, but I feel like it might not be worth.
Yep, finances might certainly be, be a bit of an issue here. That being said, the extra 160, we'll see where it's going to go towards for Kana, who's now underneath his dead turret. That was cute. Cuz is like, that minion is mine, if you don't mind.
You got the plate.
Faker getting ultied. And Teddy comes through and says, "Here, would you like my heal?" Faker's like, "Do you have 7 more? That would be great."
Faker is really trying to push the issue here with Dawning Shadow as well. I think this is fairly realistic. He just cannot get stunned. Yeah, BDD already used his ult, so Faker feels very free to kind of trade like this.
Yep, but it is splitting resources just a little bit. I guess center is theoretically a support at this stage, so not a huge deal. As Carrier up towards the top side, he's actually had a fair bit of the solo farm so far during this game. You can see 2 levels ahead of where Life is, although Life did just ding level 8.
Yep. A slight edge there. Ruler has been given so much extra gold in this game. I mean, it's insane. Like, he's been able to free farm. He got extra plates on top, was able to get the whole full plates bottom. He's going to get the top turret. It's kind of insane, actually, how much gold he has. But the range problem is not something money can solve. And that's going to be something that Gen.G need to figure out in these mid-game team fights first.
Well, here's a big teleport to come through from Rascal as Shirley is the prize, and now T1 get to set up with their poke. Let's see how it's going to be utilized as Clear dodges that spear, shock blast absorbed by Rascal, who's now getting tired, and the spear will connect now as well as
reset.
Shirley is going to reset, and kkana gets to work on this turret. Remember, his W makes it very easy to do a lot of damage to these in a very short period of time.
If somebody gets low like this, it's just so hard to teamfight as Gen.G anymore. You know, even though they had the positional advantage and they were in prime position with the the power spike that they have at this point in the game before T1 actually get all their items online, they still just can't do it if T1 gets free poke like that.
Yeah, and I mean this is exactly what T1's comp is designed to do, right? And it gets stand around in the river like this, and they are just going to benefit. What did we see so much last game? Everyone's standing around in the river. I know the weather's getting warm, but I mean, you don't need it that much. You know, we can spend a little bit of time in the mid lane or in another lane.
You can't be here.
Yeah, Klitz is going to quick draw away. Oh, that bubble was so close to being extremely high value. Shirley, speaking of which, is going to be able to lock down that outer turret in the mid lane. And T1 now thinking about moving towards their next objective that they can set up a control around.
Gen.G, these are the kind of Drakes where, because you have 2 advantage and it's Cloud, I don't know if you need to fight this as Gen.G because you're walking into a team that's chipping away at you every step of your way in. And that's, if you get to the Drake, by the time you get there, will you have enough health to fight after that? I don't think the answer is yes. And they are able to dodge that spear, but they need to come in.
Carrier in a little bit of trouble here as Rascal rounds the corner. That is a decent sleep onto Ruler, but no one's able to follow up. Carrier tanking so much damage, and Rascal not able to find the smash. Now is the time when T1 thrives, though, as Faker does find Rascal. They've got so much more sustain. Teddy, not a massive amount of mana, but see the damage? Clear getting chunked. Faker darting forward to find Rascal. They still have vision of this, and Rascal is going to get snared. He's still very tanky, so should be able to get himself out of the way, but has these health bars been taken down low enough? T1 also struggling a little bit. Teddy only has about 1 more Piercing Darkness available with his mana pool, so both teams call it a stalemate and will back away. I'm getting deja vu, Wolf. What was the kill score last time?
It was around the same, 0-1 at the early part of the game. It was Gen.G who had the early kill, but I feel like, Atlas, this is a scenario where you start to see the problems of Gen.G's composition already on display this early on. And every time, the crazy thing about this too, look at kkana's CS, he's up 50 right now. Every time they scuffle like this and the chip damage comes through and Gen.G try to sort out a pick, kkana's just pushing mid lane. He always gets mid prio, he gets a ton of extra farm. He's already massively ahead. T1 have a comp that has so much pushing power. They have so much siege as well. So if the end result is a draw at the end of the fight, if it's a killless exchange, T1 get the better push. They get the better vision, they get Drake prio in this case. And the problem just compounds upon itself. You could see that in those very short moments where Ruler actually gets in and hits some of those Rens, he does a ton of damage. Yeah. But it's just so difficult to do so that it might not matter. They might have missed their window to really snowball this game.
And we haven't seen any showstoppers really do very much from Life as well. Like, I want to see the set get in there and actually try to put T1 out of position, because so far they haven't really been challenged. As BDD not quite able to find any CC onto Teddy. Even if he did, Carrier was there to keep him alive.
The Fate's Call attempt there, where you send in, you send up in a knock-up, in a set, then he showstops in, should be enough to guarantee kills at this stage, and the fact that it's not is very concerning, right?
It needs to be coordinated, right? Like, if you can do it with Rascal being able to drive a train into T1, like...
BDD needs to hit that follow-up Scar of the Week, right?
Yeah.
And if you can lock down one target, doesn't matter who it is, and kill them, then you can just face roll the team fight, in most cases, with the set.
Yeah, and that's why they focus on Carrier, right? Because if they kill him, they kill the Devourer as well, right? He's the most pickable target right now. As, okay, here comes the train. Another flash comes out from kkana. That was already back up since their last fight. As Kemp Tank comes down, great knock up. And Klitz should have the damage for this one. kkana just out of position, pushing up a little bit too far. Now Gen.G in a 4 versus 5 scenario, but There's 4 minutes left on this streak. What are you really fighting for?
Yeah, exactly.
At this stage of the game as Faker jumps on over, he'll find the bubble.
Uh-oh.
Onto Clid as BDD flashes in front of the Battlestar to keep his jungler alive, and now Ruler finds Faker, who may be overextended. Fate's call is going to land under the Tahm Kench as Faker spends so much time in his belly, but it means that Carrier gives up his life. Scat of the week is good onto Cuz, but that is 2 picks now for Gen G.
2 picks for Gen G, but unfortunately there's a bit of a, objective void here, as you mentioned. Unfortunately, even though they get kills here, there's not much you can turn this into, and they might be able to get the mid-turret for this. I think they will, as Faker is still trying to trade something back at the moment. But that was really well played from Gen G. You punish Kana, who's out of position, who also lost his flash, which is pretty significant for the upcoming fight. And you can see, again, if you can have that engaged when T1 aren't playing on stable footing, when they aren't playing in this insane front-to-back position where they have so much poke, it's very difficult to actually handle these team fights. So Kana does have to flash the drain, the ult coming through from Rascal, and then Gen G say, okay, I see blood in the water. T1 either have to leave him out to dry, or they have to fight. And if they're going to fight, BDD is coming over here too. And then T1 fight a lot here. They stay very long. They try to set up a Faker's flank to get a kill. And then there's just this amazing moment here where BDD says, absolutely not. Flashes the Battlestar.
Sick.
And they even committed Teddy's ultimate here to try to get that kill. So a lot of resources used. There's no way out of the Fate's call here, unfortunately, for T1 at this stage. Carry has to give his life for the retreat, but it feels like T1 stayed so long to fight for the scraps of this fight, and that's the kind of mistake you can make against a comp like this where Gen G can start to snowball a game away from you if you give them too much agency.
Well, BDD going to get snared up. Life now in position to try to defend. Clid makes his way through, and now Teddy might be out of position. Devour going to be used, but now it's on cooldown. There's Scat of the Week. Canner is dead once again, and here's the re-engage. Ulti comes through Cuz. Goes golden to mitigate it. Clid going to survive, and now the showstopper comes in. He's dead, actually, because there's no Fate's call to keep him alive. However, now Faker could be in trouble, and this is not the kind of fighting that T1 wants.
Turret,
Ruler in trouble. Yeah, this turret is 100% the MVP as Pierce does a lot of work onto Faker, and Gen G are bullied out of the way for now.
I mean, this is where it starts to get scary. I thought we'd already passed the point to where Gen G can get picks like this and actually take these fights so decisively and really catch T1 out of position. But T1 are making some very serious mistakes in terms of the positioning. Gen G see blood in the water. Their execution of this draft has been so phenomenal that even from behind, they now find themselves with a gold lead now in these very aggressive picks. It's not straight up front-to-back team fighting. It's just punishing of positional error. As we watch again, you see Kana steps way too far forward into this fight. He chases very significantly. Look at where Clid is. He comes back through. Life is practically immortal at this stage of the game. You can't kill him. And Clid comes over, gets that extra damage on the Kana, and at this point the fight is over. But Gen G know that their win condition is to snowball super hard. They commit the showstopper, everything here, to actually end up getting a favorable trade. The turret is doing so much damage in this scenario. Look at all the resources T1 have to use defensively here. It's actually crazy. But at the end of the day, like, this is looking better for Gen G than I think it should.
Yeah, and I actually really love that Rulers, with the upgraded shield for the shield bow, it looked like that turret didn't actually do damage to him. It was very, very cute. But of course, that just procced it. 2-0-1 now for the Callista. And you can see why. I mean, this is the Flame Horizon timing for Ruler over Carrier. It's not something, like, there should always be a CS gap, right? Especially now that Teddy has started farming. This is a little bit earlier, though, and Ruler is certainly in a very, very good position. I do still find it so difficult to try and conceptualize just, like, how strong the bottom lanes are when it's sent Tahm Kench against X.
It is hard.
But it feels like Ruler's in a good spot.
I mean, he's been given so many extra resources, too. So many extra turret plates, for example. It's not just the CS that he was also given. His sleep does connect.
Yeah, and Life is going to take a hell of a lot of damage. There's Dawning Shadow, and Fate's Call mitigates it for now. But that is so many resources just to keep Life alive, and now he has to go home anyway. So, T1 will be able to grab their second Cloud Drake, and I want to apologize yet again. Like, think about if this was Ocean.
If this is Infernal or Ocean, yeah, it's a different story.
I mean, if it's Ocean, it's like infinite mana, and then you just like get all of your health back if you can actually, you know, stay at arm's length from Gen G. Like, that makes it very scary. Cloud Soul, not quite so much, although, you know, more movement speed is good.
I just loved in that last...
out of the way.
I loved in that last fight, Clid was like, I am not taking a bullet for you, Life. You are going to actually eat this Battlestar. And, you know, I mean, if you end up getting that almost 100-0 damage that Faker is going to have, you know, at this stage, he's even now got a Dark Seal because he knows he's really going to start popping off, getting a ton of those stacks and then doing a ton of damage. Like, he's going to get a Horizon focus soon, too.
Yep.
You really have to respect that damage, and if anyone gets slept, they're basically dead. I mean, you have the ability to block a lot of that damage as Rascal here, but, I mean, if he's not in a position to do so, and even if he eats the damage, you eat it too much, and then you can't fight anymore. Gen.G are so reliant on these picks. The Showstopper, right? The Fate's Call. And when you see it used defensively like we saw in that last fight, you know that Gen.G just have no opportunity to fight. They have to walk away. But 2 Drake advantage, that's the buffer you have here. And they've still been able to work into so many of these picks where you didn't expect, you know, especially into a poke composition for them to be able to get. They've been able to make it happen when T1 oversteps, so see if they can do it again.
Speaking of which, gonna get the stun there onto Cuz, who's gonna get devoured. Now that is on cooldown. However, they just choose not to walk up the river, and that is absolutely fine. But I like Gen.G's idea. What Gen.G can't do is start Baron. If they start Baron, then all of the poke rains on in. What they can do, though, is deny vision and set up the picks around the area.
Yes.
And we'll see how well they do that. We saw Cuz, for the brunt of it, only has a broken stopwatch. Zonya's going to be on the way very soon. As Life picks up a trap, but not going to get speared. Cleared towards the bottom side, has a huge advantage when it comes to farm. He is the secondary carry right now.
He really is. Set has to stay near the Callista non-stop, otherwise you can't get that Fate's Call value, and that means that he can't be threatening anywhere else. And that is something that's so transparent and so predictable for T1. They know that if Set is there, Callista has to be nearby, and if she's not, then you know you're not going to do any damage. At this point, they know she's backed, and they're going to try to come in here and take away some of this vision. And they're just going to keep chipping away, and it's Rascal who's going to eat the damage. And this passive moment here really benefits T1. Like, their draft is going to scale up better at this stage than Gen.G's does. So yeah, Gen.G can take vision away and just say, you better come over here and stop us from doing the Baron that we're definitely not doing. And T1 is just not going to be afraid of this. This is a great moment for Kanda to go side lane. Look, that's exactly what he's doing. He's gone to the bottom side of the map because you don't need him to be here right now. He's got teleport.
You don't want him to be here, actually. You want to play 4-1. You lose team fights as T1, especially with Rascal being such a big menace in the front line. T1's comp, yes, it can outscale, but it's very different. The way that these two teams win is different. However, I feel like T1 should be able to, in the late game, force impossible situations onto Gen.G that Gen.G may not necessarily be able to do themselves.
Yeah.
Right? So T1 have fashioned themselves some agency. It's just whether or not they can actually make it happen.
Look at the resources that are pulled down to deal with Kana. And this time he does not overextend. He knew that the rest of Gen.G was around Baron, had to back to go deal with him, so he's in a good spot. There's pings showcasing, okay, he's got to be in the area, but we're probably not going to catch him right now. So many resources given over. And this is part of why Kana was picked twice in this game, in the side lane, because while T1 have to kind of group up otherwise 4-man to get that poke done, to make sure they're not picked by the aggressive, very, very strong early Gen.G comp, that's what he's going to get value for T1 is in that side lane. He's punished for it, but he's doing his job correctly. And in this later part of the game where you have that Baron tussle, it's just so much more difficult to rotate somebody over there or multiple players over there to deal with him, so he gets away with it.
Yeah, if he wins in a side lane, then it becomes so comfortable for T1, right? Because then they just get to threaten Baron, and then they're going to be able to turn and win a 4 versus 3 is okay. Now it's just body blocking. Spear going to connect. Ruler in a little bit of trouble. Does have a lot of life steal, so should be able to just use this wave to get himself back up. Oh no, Cuz! Going to get taken down solo. The Primal Surge was decent, but that orb will finish him off. That's the jungler dead, and now Gen.G might think about heading towards this Baron.
They have good vision control here too, Atlas. I mean, there's nothing for T1. They don't have the vision to actually throw these Battle Stars. They have to throw them blind. Well, they have to contest. They have to contest.
Faker will be able to get extra vision utilizing his portal jump, but 4 versus 5 is so dangerous.
No smite.
They are looking for a little bit of a flank, and it is just going to be taken by Gen.G. They had the Ren, they had the smite. No way that T1 could answer, and now maybe out of position as Rascal is hurting Teddy and Carrier. The 2-man face breaker is beautiful, and now Carrier needs to try and get over the wall, and he spits Teddy out. He might be safe, but BDD says absolutely not. And he's going to be able to find him exactly the perfect teleport. As Gen.G, they're actually just, they're farmers. They're farmers. They're hurting T1 right now.
It's insane. And BDD is playing the series of his life right now. He sets up the pick that goes on to Cuz at the most critical moment. It's proactive plays like this on the Syndra. We've been talking about it all playoffs. Sometimes Syndra feels like a boring pick, sit back and poke, not as interesting as so many of the other mid laners we have, but if you're able to just go forward, hit that Scour of the Week, and set up for a kill like this so consistently as we saw him doing the Orianna in Game 1, now on the Syndra, he's making such a big impact. You can actually make that pick into a Baron winning game move, right? Like, okay, yeah, Ruler gets caught here, but look at where BDD is. He's just on vision. Clutch, you want to throw another spear? I know where you are. I know where you threw that spear from. Goodbye. And Life has a perfect follow-up. This is so well played from BDD, and this pick gets you a Baron. Now you can't fight.
So good though. Like, Gen.G just knew exactly what T1's options were and played to precisely what they were going to do. Look at Life. He just teleports in and says, "Bye, Teddy. You had no choice."
This is actually extremely difficult to do, extremely difficult to pull off with this low-range comp. But it's proactive plays like that around vision control that can really set you up for success. I mean, Gen.G have such a massive lead in this game now. We might be threatening inhibitors.
Yeah.
This is actually crazy. I mean, we're 31 minutes into the game, and they're still winning team fights. They're still getting picks. This should not be happening.
This is the difficulty with the poke comp, though. This is something that we talk about all the time. When you fall behind, the snowball is so much easier. Like, it's a knife's edge style of composition because now T1, how are you supposed to keep yourself together if Rascal can just walk up and soak everything and he's fine? As this CC needs to come through, right? Like Ruler getting tagged by Teddy, that gives you a lot of time, but Cleared getting some spare time with a turret is absolutely not what you want, as now T1 stretched a little bit thin and Gen.G sieging this one beautifully despite their lower range.
They are in such a good position here to just take these turrets out. 30 seconds left on the Baron buff. Oh, look at Life!
Flashing on in, finds the face breaker. Faker has to flash out once again. It's going to be Rascal there driving the train forward and Faker nowhere that he could go. Dawning Shadow isn't saving anyone as Carrier falls down as well. Teddy does have a fair bit of damage. There are lower health bars. But Gen.G just look inevitable right now.
They look like they want to end the game right now, Teddy.
Oh dear, Rascal just standing in front of him. Yes, that is a hell of a lot of damage. BDD, you have been so good this game. Cuz and Canna against the world. Can they actually do this? But I don't think the answer is yes. Nexus turret number 2 goes down. Gen.G move to 2-0 against T1 in the playoffs.
What an unbelievable start here for Gen.G, and BDD makes it happen again. Decisive plays on the Orianna, decisive plays on the Syndra, and this is the Gen.G that fans were waiting for. This was the Gen.G fans were hands clasped and praying for, because you never know what form you're going to see from Gen.G in a best of 5. You never know if Gen.G is going to show up against T1. It feels like the mental block that this team has had historically against T1 is just wiped away. We have a clean slate here tonight, and Gen.G with two completely different styles of composition. Game 1, very slow, extreme late game scaling. Game 2, very much about early game control, feeding the Kalista and taking hard engages, and they succeed against a poke comp. At 30 minutes in the game is when they strike and win, and that's just so unlikely, that's so unrealistic, but they got the advantages early enough to make it happen. And Atlas, it starts to feel like we might actually have the one-sided series that no one predicted.
Absolutely not. I alluded to it earlier, right? I feel like a lot of us were on the T1 hype train a little bit more than we otherwise could. There was good reason for it, but we knew Gen.G were capable. It's just so many of us couldn't believe. I'm starting to. I'm starting to
believe.
I'm waiting for like the Reddit thread where you just see Gen.G BDD has disconnected, Longzhu BDD has reconnected, because this is like that extraordinary final. This is what we know BDD is capable of. And it's just so good to see it finally in a playoff. Even if they get reverse swept now, I'm happy. Like, this is what we wanted. We wanted to see peak Gen.G versus T1. I want to see now peak T1 come out, because I think that is going to be an extraordinary third game. That being said, it may still be a 3-0.
It's interesting the psychosis of this too in terms of these two drafts for Gen.G, because in the first game you punish T1 for playing passive because they don't have agency, they have to sit back, and then you're like, well, the game's mine then. Then T1, the first thing that's in everyone's mind is maybe we played a little bit too passive with that game. And in this game, you're caught in a similar situation where the map is taken, you're behind, you try to be aggressive, then you get picked, you get blown up, you lose Baron. Like, the mental gymnastics that have to be going through the T1 players' minds right now after too passive to a little bit too far forward, it's insane. We're going to take a look at our post-game, see who did the damage here, Atlas, but...
It's crazy. Like, I actually love the fact that Gen.G, they play the reactionary comp first, and then they play the proactive comp, and it's completely different styles. Both of them played very, very well. Still relatively slow, but T1 haven't been able to punish Gen.G. Their defensive play has just been really, really good. And you can see this time it is Teddy doing a lot of work. Of course, Canna tripling the damage of a Scion is something that's pretty obvious, but once again, BDD, extraordinary on the Syndra. This is a champion that, you know, skill expression is a little bit harder because we've seen so many players do it. The gameplay button exists and we call it that for a reason. But his flanks, his positioning, his picks, his timings, so good.
His game sense, man. He knew where the spear came from. He was like, and he rotated right over and he says, if you're looking for a second spear, I've got news for you. You see that second spear come through, that's a kill, that's Baron, that's game. Gen.G on match point.
Yep. BDD, of course, he brought Cuz to a royal road and he might be sending him home early in the playoffs. We are going to go to a short break. When we come back, possibly the final game of the series. Definitely match point for Gen.G. Don't go anywhere.
일말 듯.
일로 와.
예스타 조이 필요하 조이 맞아
나 포함 볼게.
조이
네.
높을
천천히
약하게 캔디부터 캔디부터
펜지 노플이야.
오케이
바텀.
일단 바텀
오케이
업데이트.
오케이
미드까지 쓸래?
80초
나 가보게
바텀으로 갈래?
바텀으로 가자.
일단 피부터 줘
바텀으로 가자. 바텀으로 가자.
레스터? 오케이 끝.
한 볼게. 얘.
세나 보자 세나 높을
오케이
카운터.
나턴
힘
있고
바르다 제이스
니달리가 나온다.
타워부터 해줘. 타워부터.
오케이 타워부터
타워
타워
타워할게. 내가 타워할게. 타워 해줘. 타워 해줘.
천천히
타워다
빅무빙
끝났다.
끝내자 제이스 높을
나이스. 3판까지 붙이자.
오케이.
나이스.
Nothing can stop a determined cat. Begin 5ing protocol. All will bow before the rightful overlords of the galaxy. Cats. Enemy detected.
Come on, you. Let's dance. Transmodulate.
Enemy targets will be destroyed.
The groove flows through me. Thank you, groove.
Don't talk to the groove.
Genji is already on a match point by taking 2 games in a row, and they looked even stronger in game number 2. Genji highly prioritized that Kalista pick and then locked in Set as the bottom duo. And we could see the power of those two duo. And I can say Genji prepped really hard, drafting around their bottom lane. And T1, just like Genji did, they banned away, even though Jinx, still they countered it with Senna and Tompkins. Usually, Kalista, in a vacuum, you know, she is usually powerful together with Thresh. And once they saw Senna Tompkins locked in by T1, they just skipped the Thresh pick. They rather rotated it to Set, and they had very high priority in lane because they were able to get the Drake as well, which means Senna cannot get that extra souls coming out from the dragon as well. Props over to Genji for preparing this hard for something unexpected on the bottom lane. And Tompkins is not really easy to play up against Set because this champion actually counters this Tompkins Devour because he can re-engage every time he puts his AD carry back to safety. So looking at the Senna Tompkins and Kalista Set matchup, well, in the later game, Senna Tompkins can have their power spike once Tompkins gets enough armor items, but Genji tried something new over here. They actually didn't match the lane up against Senna Tompkins because they knew that in the later phase, Senna Tompkins definitely has the edge over Kalista Set. I think Genji prepared really hard in order to bring some counter strategy into that poke comp coming out from T1. Now let's take a look at this first highlight where Raska was having some hard time in both games. In game number 2 especially, he had to teleport back after dying very early and purchasing no item. He was playing under a huge pressure, but after that he hit level 6 and he was able to, you know, do a fair bit of a tanking work up against Jace. And heading to the mid and late game, Sion can actually exert pressure up against Jace. It was a huge turnaround coming out from Raska, but something that was expected looking at this champion matchup. T1 had no vision around their side lanes, so Jace was pushing the lane under huge pressure. And together with Graves, Sion was able to chase down that Jace with this active item as well. And BDD, the protection coming out from this Syndra was really heartwarming as well. Flashing in order to block the damage coming out from Zoe was really impressive. I think BDD today, he's been on his best form. And Senna and Tompkins, they are really strong if they have some pressure around their side lanes, you know. If their mid and top can 1-3-1 effectively, Senna and Tompkins is super strong because they can make cross-map play. But looking at the highlight, you know, T1 had no vision around their side lanes, and they were not able to gain any vision around that jungle because Genji already had a bit of a lead at that point in the game. Whereas Genji was able to show off their teamwork. And let's take a look at the second highlight where BDD was able to once again pop off as a main character of a team fight. So Nidalee gets rid of the ward, so which means she reveals herself to Genji's vision, whereas Syndra was hiding outside of T1's vision, so Syndra was able to snipe that Nidalee from the darkness. And they clean up the kill, and Syndra gets her reset after they finished that Baron. It was a very easy Baron for Genji because there was no opponent jungler on the side of T1. And as soon as the Baron got picked up, BDD instantly finds a reset, and we can see the ping going onto that flank ward. BDD and Genji together was setting up for that wraparound team fight. during the regular split, there were some moments where Gen.G didn't find enough synergy and teamwork, but today I think they were moving as one team, so unified, and they looked as a perfect team together. We're seeing another level of Gen.G today, and BDD was the clutch player on the side of Gen.G for sure. Now let's take a look at the player of the game, whether it's gonna be BDD or whether it's gonna be someone else. It is going to be BDD on Syndra, no doubt. 206 KDA. It's not about BDD doubling the damage coming out from the opponents, but he knew how to suffocate the opponent based on the macro play, and also some of them clutch moments in order to save his teammates was really on point. BDD today looks so chill. He's not in a rush. He knows when he has to go in, but he also knows when he has to just, protect their teammates. He always had firm control of lane, and that much of a winning mentality is actually a huge advantage in terms of a best of 5 series. I think BDD is definitely super calm and collected, performing at this playoffs round number 2. I mean, Tom can definitely have an ability to save its teammate, but you cannot save or devour 5 players at a time, and the opponents are diving onto you for 5 different directions. And BDD picks up POG back-to-back today, and I think Gen.G found another hero on their side. T1 really needs to come back and stop Gen.G's momentum, so let's move on to game number 3.
Thank you so much, Jisun, as per usual, for the outstanding translation of the analyst desk. And here we are, back again for match point. To be perfectly honest, a lot of me was expecting a match point here in Game 3. However, I think that the team name is certainly different to a lot of the expectations. This has been a big overperformance for Gen.G.
It really has.
I think that there's also been a little bit of underperforming on the side of T1 side. Gentlemen, that was just on your screen there, Cuz having a bit of an invisible game in game number 2. Poke compositions are certainly a tightrope, so maybe it's about going back to the drawing board, by building yourself one of these teamfight compositions, one of these skirmish style of compositions with some early game agency, and allow T1 to go back to that style that made them so good, which was control first turret blood, get yourself all of that extra gold, snowball from there in the way that you know that you can, because their macro play is so good if they have that tempo lead and that advantage.
Yeah, they've chosen blue side, I believe, for this what could be potentially our last game, and there's a lot of priority picks you can get. If they're given the opportunity to pick the Thresh or the Seraphine, you can look towards that late game carrying potential, but also, something like Aphelios Thresh get ahead, and then kind of all in on going to late game, unlike in game 1. But as we pointed out, as we go into this third draft, Gen.G showed us 2 completely different styles of play, and now they might even be able to throw a curveball. It will be blue side here for T1. They could even throw a curveball here and play, something like Jin Zhao or something else that they have prepared. Odin and the coaching staff of Gen.G made it very clear in pre-game interviews that they are willing to pull out all the stops to this series. They don't care how much they have to show. They just want to go to the finals no matter what. But already up 2-0 in this series, you don't necessarily have to throw a curveball, but T1 have just been one step behind the curve in both drafts. And in game number 2, I really thought they had a massive advantage, but they couldn't execute on it. And I think it's true that Cuz definitely did not make the same amount of impact that you need him to have. As Danny looks on, a lot of pressure on this guy all season long. He's changed all the rosters, he's very confident in the roster they've settled on here. But to go out 0-3, if they lose this game after only one prediction for Gen.G by ㅅ out of all analysts in Korea, would be insane. It would be absolutely crazy. As we will see, it looks like the priority on the Udyr once again.
Well, this time it is going to be the Udyr. The Thresh remains available, and this is something that, is the toss-up, right? This is the gamble that T1 took in game number 1, but the other way around. So, Clid now thinking about going towards the Olaf. That worries me. Just a little bit. I hope that they do have a bit of Orianna priority here.
Yeah,
so that they can enable the Olaf as the game goes on. However, I just don't like the pick. That being said, still going to be locked away.
Also, well, they're going to take the Kalista. I was going to say Rel Olaf is also not a bad option either, but they will take the Kalista. They're going to go down the same path in terms of that early game control. The Thresh is available. I would love to see T1 go into something like the Aphelios Thresh, but then actually draft for that later part, hit the second part of this draft, very much more better scaling-wise. I don't think this is going to be where the solution lies in the blind Jace pick this early on the draft.
Yeah, blind
Unless it's
Jace
a crazy bait or something like that.
It's very interesting.
Ooh, I'm not a huge fan of this one.
Jace can theoretically be flexed. Faker could play it if he wants to, but doesn't feel like a Faker pick. It feels like Canna just trying to get a hold of one of the champions that he does feel comfortable on. Is this T1 actually just waiting and allowing, you know, Gen G to pick their bottom lane, and then Teddy and Kerry are picking accordingly? Could be an option here, but Gen G are on red side. They have the opportunity of grabbing their support in their last pick and giving their Kalista the best time possible. This is very odd, it's just blind picks all over the place here for T1.
But they're blind picks that work well around the vision control that Udyr will give you. It's another poke composition for T1. They didn't have the Udyr in the previous set. They had Nidalee, which is, again, not terrible at clearing wards, but not the same amount of power. And it feels like we're going to see a slightly different version, actually, of Game 2 here in Game 3. See the Sion pick come through once again for Gen G. And now T1 have the opportunity to kind of warp how this bottom lane is played in terms of the supports they can ban away for the Kalista here. You know, Tahm Kench, definitely somebody you can, you know, you could take away. Set, definitely going to be removed, you imagine.
I think the Set is 100% going to be a ban. I think live Set is too good. Remember, you did see the stats for his Set so far this season. It is 3-4, including this game, or last game.
Yep.
Before this, though, it was undefeated, 8-0 or something like that, moving into this season. So definitely worth the respect. Is Tahm Kench going to be taken away from T1?
They, you know, they take away the Tahm Kench, like I was saying earlier, so it makes it a lot more difficult to play that Senna comp if you're T1. And, I mean, I'm thinking about other options here. If you're really going to go all in on the poke, I mean, something like a Jhin ban isn't even out of the question. Ezreal, another opportunity that T1 have to take away.
I really like Ezreal here.
Yeah,
I really like Ezreal.
I think Gen G should consider banning it against T1 here. And that's not one of those stable bot picks that you have for T1 in this poke-based composition. They'll take away the Thresh, though, which removes a lot of low mobility champions from the equation.
Yep, it makes it harder to pick something like Varus that Teddy has been going towards. Certainly another one of his poke options. And once again, T1 looks like they're building towards that poke composition, as that set that we called for is going to be banned.
Super easy to predict how this is going to go just based on the last game. So it becomes easy to remove some of those options. Really like the Orianna ban. This will probably force BDD once again onto the Syndra. Nico being hovered here.
This is a flex. This is actually really interesting. Can theoretically be going mid, but it is just going to be Syndra. So Nico Kalista being flirted with on the side of Gen G, but Syndra will be locked away, Teddy, with his center in mind, but this would add a lot more CC. I like Ashe.
The Ashe is actually pretty interesting, but the Samira is a big departure, actually, from T1. So what T1 is looking to do with this comp now is to poke everybody low, and then Inferno trigger to clean everybody up. I mean, you can chip away and then have hard engage with the Rel. Samira comes through to clean things up. It's a pretty, you know, straightforward team composition here for T1, but it's really reliant on having that extra lead, having that extra vision that Udyr is going to need to have.
I want Gragas so bad. I mean, the Alistar works into Rel as well, but I think Gragas would be so strong because you can also deny the Rel, and Gragas Kalista is so strong. Life was also a fantastic Gragas support in the past, has been foregoing it recently. Alistar definitely is going to be one of these frontliners that can soak a little bit, especially with his Unbreakable Will. But Gen G have themselves a different composition. I don't like the Olaf so much, but we'll be able to help them out in the early stages. We heard the analyst desk talking about the fact that Olaf is there to sort of mitigate some early game trials. I personally don't think he does it well enough to justify it. But Gen G, if they can make it work, who is going to judge? And T1, though, it just like, I don't see where the augmentation is of the poke with this Samira-Rel combination that they've locked in. Are they going to be able to do enough in order to find these pop-off team fights? That's my question.
It's going to be hard, you know, and if I could remove the nameplates and if I hadn't watched Game 2, I would really like T1's draft. I think on paper it works very well. You chip away, then you ult in with Keria as Rel, and then Samira cleans up. You have Faker, who's been able to hit Battle Stars consistently, but we saw how well Gen.G can play this composition, how aggressively the BDD will play the Syndra. Look for those picks. The Fates calling we saw, or Fates calls we saw from Ruler just previously are amazing as well. And Alistar is another support that works extremely well with those types of hard engage. Not the same way that Set does, but he can set up a pick for you. You can get BDD, these opportunities for follow-up CC. Ruler does massive damage. You get picks onto the composition that T1 are running, and it falls apart very quickly. But I think on paper, if you're not behind this T1, this is still a very strong poke composition, but they have to execute better than we saw last game. And I like the adaptation of the Udyr. Get that vision control and use it to control some of those parts of the map that you were fighting blind on in Game 2.
Yep. We need to see Keria also get a lot of proactivity early on this Rel, who does have a lot of impact. Look for those Herald fights. Look for that Rel to be able to dictate terms. And then if they can get that snowball, hit that mid-game spike, things certainly can work out. But here we are onto the Rift for game number 3, match point for Gen.G. as they get red side yet again. Should theoretically make it a little bit more difficult. This is Gen.G's preferred side, of course.
I feel like the execution of Udyr, you know, he doesn't have the exact same sort of impact damage-wise that Nidalee does, but he has a much easier execution in terms of setting up picks. Against the Sion, you're not going to be able to really get that kill with Jace necessarily unless the Sion is way overextended, because you don't have the follow-up spear where you can hit it without being under threat of turret. You kind of have to all-in more on that. So, you know, it's not going to be great in that regard, but it could maybe potentially net you an advantage in the mid lane. So that's something to look out for. But I think the real story of the Udyr here is going to be about that mid to late game vision control. Warding, clearing wards up, because that's what Faker needs in order to hit those sleeps, to set up for those picks.
I think a little bit more focused mid lane as well would be a good idea. BDD has so far been deathless throughout this series. Of course, not a lot of Gen.G players have died so much this series, but BDD has been largely untouched. And so trying to put him on the back foot could be an idea, at least mentality-wise, in this series. Is Rascal and Canna going to go at it once again, see whether Rascal has a better or worse time.
You know what's interesting about this pick, too, on the Samira? I think a lot of people will dislike it and discredit it right away because Samira has gone through some significant changes. She got buffed a little bit recently, but she was also very nerfed. She has a pretty low win rate in the LCK. And also, it's not Teddy's playstyle. He's kind of a late-game carry-style player, generally speaking. He's not a mid-game, you know, extreme hard-engaged type player. I think he's 0-1 on the Samira. We saw just a moment ago, so he's only played it once, even this season.
Yep.
He was on the bench during a lot of the time where she was popular.
Yep,
but
she definitely playing most of it.
And, you know, it's a champion that doesn't feel like it suits Teddy, and it feels outdated. But I think for the way that T1's comp chips down against Gen.G and then you can clean up, I think it suits the composition very well. It's just going to be about the execution, again, here for T1.
Yeah, actually, like, a reset champion in the AD carry position sort of makes some sense when you do have a lot of catch potential, a lot of blow-up in theory that you can get with a Jace and a Zoe. See a bit of a wraparound here as Canna slightly overextended. The Ghost already comes out. Acceleration gate. You can see Canna trying to go for the 1-for-1 as the Undertow is going to land, but they're just happy with a flash, and Clid is just going to run back towards his Krugs and say that it didn't even cost me any time.
Definitely ended up being pretty well handled there by Canna. You know, ends up losing his flash, which can be a problem for follow-up rotations that we do see down. It's going to make him a little bit wary about pushing too far forward when he's trying to chip at this Sion, but ends up being, you know, a little bit of wasted time here for a jungler that, you know, yeah, sure, he just
This is super cool from Kaz. Yeah, Clid spots him.
He's up a level.
Yeah, this is really rough. Undertow actually misses as well.
He's dead.
There's no flash available. That's just going to be Kaz nicking First Blood away. Great positioning, and look at this. Kaz has a pretty invisible game in Game 2.
Yeah.
It all around here as there's the attract repel on the bottom side. Ruler has to flash to get himself out of the way, and now Life in a bit of trouble. He has his flash available, but an explosive start to this one as now Rascal, this is a familiar situation as Kaz is going to get knocked up. He's underneath this turret. Canna is going to go down, so it's a trade in the end. And Rascal has teleport available here as well and will be able to tidy up this minion wave, so may not have to use it, we'll see.
Yeah, that's the kind of play that I'm talking about with the Udyr that's different from the Nidalee. You really have to get under the turret to make that play happen onto the Sion, but it ends up being proactive once again. He's almost doubled Klid's farm in this game because he was, he's just a faster clearing champion. Then gets the impact in the top lane twice. One onto Klid, and then of course one onto the Rascal. It's a trade, but it really pushes the tempo advantage here into T1's favor quite significantly. And this is the power of Udyr that you're going to get, is almost guaranteed, easy to execute pressure. And you talked about the invisibility of Cuz in the last game. That's absolutely true, but proactive plays like this that are very easy to execute, you can't really mess this up. It's actually a mental game, right? Like, Monte Cristo, he talks about Udyr a lot, even though he's not an LCK commentator anymore, as the old man hands champion. Cuz is still very young, right? And he's a very mechanically gifted player, but you have a bad execution game like the last one, then you play Udyr. It's light, night and day, the difference in terms of how easy it is to pull off. Ends up being a trade here, but you'll take those.
It was definitely optimistic, as Cuz makes his way down bot lane, and you can see that actually Ruler and Life have managed to win a couple of trades in a row. Control ward goes down, and Cuz, it is his jungle this time.
Yeah, certainly is. Looks like T1 rotating around this Infernal Drake. It's an early pickup that can be, it's going to be useful all game long for T1's poke composition. So definitely something they'd love to grab early if they can, but it's Olaf jungle. A little bit tough to lock that one down early. At least they have the vision. Gen.G do, so they can keep Olaf farming right now, so he doesn't fall even further behind. He's actually managed to catch up quite significantly. Yeah,
doing actually a pretty decent job. Got a couple of camps to pick up as well. Now finally going for his reset, so this is where Cuz should probably surge ahead, who's got his Gromp and his Krogs to take down now. His Life just says goodbye to Carrier, tanks up a turret shot for fun, and looks like Teddy makes his way back. He's got himself a Vampiric Scepter heading towards his shield bow as soon as he can find it. And he should be able to sweep up most of these minions pretty comfortably. Ruler, similar back, but does have a slight AD advantage with his longsword in his pocket. That's a cute little knock-up from Rascal as Cuz walks over a ward. Rascal knows about this, but he has no flash. Level 6 is available though, so of course the train can just head on forward, and no flashes available here from Canna or Cuz to get in the way.
That's such an important ward. Without that, I think Rascal dies here, without the information, unless he has an insane game sense. Just feels it out.
The other thing is this dragon now goes over because Cuz reveals himself.
Well, T1 are going to fight for this.
Yeah,
so he's here.
He's going to dive in. That's actually pretty scary. And of course, Cuz is going to roam on over, and with the advantage that he picked up for himself, Gen.G, and with BDD only just resetting. A little bit unfortunate. They started it off hoping that it was going to work, but I think I myself actually underestimated quite the movement speed of Mr. Udyr.
Well, I mean, these are the kinds of things that can happen, and T1 were very aware of this. They knew that if they were going to make an aggressive trade like that happen on the top side, that the break play was going to be there. Very fast rotation from Carrier, even himself, to come over there and slow that down, and T1 are even going to steal this blue buff away. This is very much it almost feels like someone in the T1 house was like, all right, guys, that was not our level. We need to play better in Game 2, because the individual performances we're seeing, and even the team-based macro decisions we're seeing from T1 here, are significantly better than what we saw in Game 2. They're just not letting Gen.G get that same early tempo advantage.
No, absolutely, and I think this is beautiful. This is how T1 have won games, right? It is with snowballs. It is with being able to put on so much pressure early. It's utilizing the fact that Cuz has come into this roster and played above even his own high standards throughout this season. And he didn't manage to do that in game number 2. Is certainly starting off this game on the right foot. As they have a 400 gold advantage. They have themselves that Infernal Drake as well. I'm a little bit nervous because we have to roll another 50-50. But that's okay.
Yeah, definitely pretty good chances that it's not really a 50-50 actually behind the scenes with Atlas here on the casting desk. But I'm concerned about Gen.G's composition, because this is not Ruler having, a massive, massive lead. Yeah, he has a 20 CS lead.
20 CS ain't bad.
Yeah, it's not bad, but it's not going to be the massive lead we saw in Game 1, or rather Game 2, the previous game of the Kalista. And their composition still has similar range problems that we saw in the last game. And, we saw a very early lead here for T1 with this Udyr pick. They're getting the extra value on the top side of the map. Feels like a very different version of the same styles of compositions here, but T1 are actually making it work in fairly dominant fashion. Like, yeah, it's only a few hundred gold, 200 at the moment in the lead, but the problems that the composition faced in the last game with minion waves blocking them, they had no map control, they had no vision, that's not going to plague them in this game.
Well, Faker does find the point-blank bubble, and now BDD going to take a lot of damage. He did manage to clear up all the minions, though, so was probably looking for a reset anyway, but still, definitely good news here for Faker.
Just love watching Faker hit every CS under the turret.
Yep.
Zoe, very hard.
Was beautifully done.
Yeah, it's not as easy as it looks if you've never played Zoe. Probably don't, actually. You're not going to do those.
Well, Cuz going to be able to grab this Rift Scuttler pretty comfortably, and then we'll see where he delivers the Rift Herald to. It's interesting, because very different things have happened to this game. And I think a lot of people will look towards that Rift Herald sort of being, okay. The Rift Herald being stolen away, being a huge problem for T1, really put their momentum off, right? Because they wanted to be able to get a little bit more early power and open up the map on their side rather than the other way around. And I think that did shape a lot of what happened in Game 2. Now being able to get it is very strong. However, Rascal hasn't been nearly as punished as he was last time. A trade is definitely much better for the side.
Oh, look at this. Speaking of Rift Herald, I think this gets planted in mid almost 100%. And they look to set up for even a skirmish around it.
Oh, somehow Cuz actually snuck in there.
He's going to steal some of these. Like, it's so easy to just Phoenix stance and then slap a whole set of baby chickens away.
Yeah.
It's like almost unfair, especially when you know this matchup so well. You know Clid starts it, everyone gets half health, you steal it away. He gets extra vision here. He's got the fast track. Even gets to clear this ward.
Oh, bubble goes wide. No punishment, as Rascal, speaking of punishment, is going to say, no, that is my control ward.
They know that now Clid is on the Krugs. They're not going to take this moment to drop the Rift Herald, but I think getting that first turret for Zoe, the Wolf turret as we like to call it, and all the extra gold over to Faker to accelerate his power spike in this game is definitely the name of the game here.
Yeah.
Spotted out.
Oh, Kerry actually doing the wraparound. They may not actually know that he was there. That was very, very cute. We'll have to have a look at bottom side, maybe, in just a little while to see whether he is going to pop out. But actually shows himself, as you can see on the map. Not going to find anything cheeky from it.
You see that Cuz was considering maybe making a play on the top side, but thinks better of it, plays passively. And you see the trade to the mid lane. Mid lane is back in alternately, so free waves. You see the ping come down from Faker. And it's you know, the next play here for T1 is to set up a Rift Herald in mid right before the Drake. I mean, that would be ideal. But unfortunately, they don't have enough of an advantage to necessarily pull that off. We do see the rotation in now. Check vision. The Rift Herald is the easiest way to make sure that this Drake goes T1's way. They have not committed it, though.
No, I haven't actually utilized it at all. As here towards the bottom side is exactly where T1 are positioning themselves. 4 versus 3 will be the situation as BDD still dealing with that minion wave. Rascal has teleport, as does Canna. Certainly important if this is actually something that both of these teams want to fight for.
This Rift Herald is about to time out, Atlas.
Yeah, right.
I'm like actually starting to get a little bit worried. T1, you've got an advantage here. You have an edge. You have to use it.
Well, they want to use it so that they can actually get control over this Drake, as there's the flash forward, and Faker
Huge
just
mistake.
gets baited by BDD. That's a solo kill, and they were trying to give Faker the money for this Rift Herald, as well as now Clid comes on forward. This could be even worse.
Oh, this is a disaster. I don't even think that this one's getting connected.
Oh
It's not. They deny
God.
it, and you don't find the window to use the Rift Herald. You overextend. Faker gets baited by BDD, who once again is dominating the mid lane. And this is inexcusable. Gen G should not be able to walk away with this Ocean Drake here for free. We'll find out if it's Cloud in a second. Nope.
It's just a game of inches, though,
Yeah,
right?
it really is.
Hopefully Jonas Strong throws that on massive slow-mo so we can see exactly what happened. I won the 50-50 as well, as we get a relevant Drake.
Yep.
As our soul is now Rascal's looking for Cuz. Slowing down an Udyr is an odd choice, absolutely. But he might be able to deny the steal. Should be able to.
Yep, looks like it.
Okay, Cuz just waits around the side, as you do. It's going to reset, but of course Rascal does not want to give up all of these minions.
Yeah, massive opportunity cost if you actually stay there. You're going to lose all this wave. Well, he's just going to walk up and bully Kana here under turret.
Actually, Rascal has a very large health bar, still had his ult available, so kind of has to be a little bit more careful than that. But this is, man, there has been BDDs in the past that would not have made that play.
Yeah, no, absolutely not. Like, I really do want to see the replay. I'm sure we're getting it, like, super duper well edited and
yeah,
nice
that's
angle.
Jonas Strong's like making sure that he has the timing just right.
It's going to be cinematic, okay?
Oh, yeah. It'll be like a mad movie. Here we go.
All right, so we'll watch this one more time. So Faker actually teleports forward, gets the sleep, hits max range paddle star here, and then BDD just flash forward, presses the gameplay button after the Scout of the Week. Like, it's just that simple. You just don't trust that BDD is going to hit the Scout of the Week. I mean, that's Faker's underestimation there.
Yeah, it actually, to be perfectly honest, wasn't super mega amazing. But it
was
a
basic.
little bit of a miscalculation from Faker to understand that BDD, of course, had the ability to do that. Yes, he executes perfectly, but it's Syndra, right? Like, you press all your buttons and hope that the gameplay is going to be enough to take them all down.
I mean, you get Scarlet Weak under turret like that, your health bar is so low as Zoe, like, you're just not going to be able to survive. Is Cuz trying to come up here with kind of trying to trade aggressively, not going to happen, though. This game has been very much more action-packed in the earlier stages than our last two, right? We've, like, quadrupled the kills.
Yeah, and it has to be, right? Because this is the game where T1 really have to make moves. It's not like we've handshaken on 2 scaling drafts or anything like that. T1 definitely want to be making moves early. They've opened up the map. They've made sure that they had pushing lanes in as many places as possible. Unfortunately, the rule of Callista effect is in effect, and therefore he's going to be having a pretty good time on the bottom side. You can see the heart monitor is moving closer and closer as we go on to it actually getting towards Gen G. As you can see, T1 with a slight advantage now. I just don't know whether it's going to be enough with things like the Scion here, as Rascal caught out of position by Canna.
He got baseball batted back, so he has
to... Oh, the flash in front, but he's stunned for a little bit too long. Clid running on forward, no mana on Rascal, so we can't exactly help him out. But Clid's going to be able to stride breaker his way out, and Cuz not going to be safe underneath this turret, as Ruler's going to move on over. Teddy shows himself as well.
Yeah, you don't push this any further, but you can get a Rift Herald out of this. I mean, this is a really nice play from T1. You get aggressive, you catch Rascal, you force a big rotation for Gen G, but you have a bigger one on your plate. Now nobody's getting side lane pressure, right? Ruler is not in the bottom lane. If Ruler's in the bottom lane here, nobody likes this play that much, but he stays.
That's a teleport coming on in. Life looking for the pulverize, finds it there, gives Teddy back to the rest of Gen G. Bladewell trying to get some value, and he's going to get stunned. Yep, gameplay for you, Mr. Teddy. Because now Carrier trying to get out of there, Cuz as well, just booping whoever he can. That shock blast was decent. Just don't know whether it's quite going to be enough here, because they've already lost Teddy, and that is their end of teamfight win condition, right?
Oh man, Gen G just slid under the door on this one. I mean, it was the last possible moment they could contest. They handled it so well.
Where's the Eye of the Herald? Who's got it? Where is it? Wow. What's happening? Is it still there?
I'm not 100% sure.
Where'd it go? Herald? Shirley?
We have to go back and watch because...
Did Shirley retire? What happened?
There's 3 minutes left on her before her retirement, but yeah, I think it just wasn't picked up there.
Or was it used already? I don't know.
I don't think so. I think it just didn't get picked up there. But like the moment where you see this fight really go wrong is when BD is able to get on top of Teddy. Teddy used his blade whirl very early on in the fight because he panicked, and then you can't win that fight anymore. Teddy down. And this is just Gen G understanding just how far they can push this composition, even with the Fate's Call not connecting. Let's see what happens to this Rift Herald here. I'm not actually sure who got it, because I thought Cuz got it, but yeah, he does, and he just can't pick it up. So Teddy is off on the side here, has to use Blade Roll early, so he gets caught by BDD. No one is able to get in here on top of the side, so it doesn't get picked up. And that's just T1 losing everything they committed to, losing Teddy as well, and losing a huge amount of tempo in this game. And once again, BDD finds that window to get value. Doesn't even have to flash.
Ooh, bit greedy, not actually going to press the Ragnarok button, as in comes the train, and everything misses until the train gets there, and more gameplay for you, T1. Cuz now going to get caught out of position as well, and Gen G. This is definitely a cold ball rolling down a hill right now, as there's the exhaust. Life just desperately wanted to give this kill over to Ruler, and will do so comfortably. Canna trying to get what he can on the bottom side.
I mean, it's just not going to be the same, it's not going to be equivalent, the value. They're going to get a ton of value here in mid as well, and this is, Atlas, quite frankly, the cold ball, of frozen rain droplets rolling down the hill. I mean, this game is starting to get out of control here. Gen G is still behind by 300 gold, but their execution of these skirmishes gives proof again to the idea that T1 cannot execute this poke composition very well against Gen G. Gen G are just pressing the ult buttons, walking through BDs, hitting these Scatter the Weeks. You're seeing really high agency given to Rascal on the Scion. They're finding these picks, they're finding the stuns, the CC that they have, and T1 is just never able to properly utilize their range. This is just an overextension here from T1. It's Clid that you hit with the sleep here, Faker. Unfortunately, he's a bit tanky, and he just gets taken out by BDD once again. Cuz is caught, and this is a fight you should never be taking off of a greedy Paddle Star attempt from Faker.
Yeah.
And sure, yeah, you have Kana on the bottom side of the map, so you feel like, okay, well, if we end up losing the skirmish, we're at least getting that value. But if you lose 2 people, and in the mid turret, It's not a good trade. The mid turret just barely standing, I think, on its last legs here. But a lot of damage done, and Gen.G are going to get the streak.
Yeah, it's starting to all stack up, is what it's feeling like, Wolf, as this is going to be Rift Scuttler taken down as well as this Mountain Drake, the first one of the game for Gen.G.
And this is Mountain Soul with Scion Olaf.
Oh, God.
Against a poke composition. It's so much more difficult with all the extra resistances stacking up, even with the shields here, too, to get those kills on the Samira. Unfortunately, Teddy hasn't been able to have that opportunity to really have an Inferno-triggered 5v5 teamfight pop-off moment because T1 are trying to retake tempo and making aggressive plays solo and getting punished for it. We're not seeing those 5v5 fights because they're playing into Gen.G's comp, which has so much CC, which is so terrifying. You have to show more respect. You have to play this game a little bit slower for T1, and I think that's the mentality that was kind of broken after Game 1. They played so slow and too slow because their comp didn't allow them to play any faster. And in Games 2 and 3, they're struggling.
It's so hard because they actually do have to up the tempo, right? But they have to up the tempo
safely
and do it intelligently at the same time. And sometimes when the onus is on you to make choices, you feel desperate in when to make those choices, right? Because those opportunities do need to come around. Unfortunately, it just hasn't quite been there for T1 so far. And this is... I'm starting to feel like the ruler effect is coming in just in time for playoffs as well, right? It was, they had to ride the line. Do they ban the Callista? Do they ban the Jinx? They didn't have enough room to ban both. And then they just snap it up once again. And he hadn't been playing it so much in the regular season. It was getting banned almost every game. However, we hadn't been reminded about what ruler can do or what life can do when he gets so much value. As BDD presses R and Faker loses half of his health. And the more and more BDD gets gold, the more and more difficult it is for T1, right? Because BDD is almost at one-shot territory. It's very binary, but it's still just a fact.
And not to mention that BDD is playing a very good series. You know, this is
amazing.
This is a player that you don't always say is going to make the incredible calls on the Scour of the Week's late game, but his Orianna banned against him twice. He makes the plays, and he's doing fantastically on this champion right now. And T1, it feels like they're falling further and further behind to the wayside here. They're not able to make any proactive plays. Their macro is failing them because they're trying to be so aggressive in trying to get these picks when their comp isn't really based around that, right? Trying to commit so much to get BDD, for example, in this case.
I mean, yeah, it's hard, right? Because it's like, it's poke, they do have pick options if you do find, like, the bubbles and things like that, but they've taken one outer turret on the bottom side. The same can be said for Gen.G as far as, you know, taking outer turrets, but you really want to be opening up the map. You want to be playing around the Zoe, allowing Canada to split in a side lane or add to the siege around these neutral objectives. But now I think even if they do that, Gen.G have hard engage options, and Rascal has been amazing on this Scion, being exactly where he needs to be. And if you're talking about hard engage, I don't think that there is anything more hard engaging than throwing a train into an enemy team, right? Like, that's going to do it.
And like, let me point everyone's attention to the vision score between these two junglers. Udyr is only up 6 in this game. He hasn't been able to have the same impact. And, you know, they've just cleared a little bit more of the vision away T1 have. But, you know, just moments ago, there were almost 0 blue wards on the map. And if you don't have vision, you can't walk forward into these brushes when there is that hard CC, there is that hard engage for Gen.G. They can blow up any single target. On the side of T1, they don't have a tank, they don't have a front line. And if you don't have vision, you just can't do a whole lot as T1. You can't even paddle star. You can't look for those trouble bubbles you were talking about. And that's a big problem, and it really limits the impact of the Udyr in this composition if he cannot consistently clear those wards.
Yeah. And it has to be a second item. Lord Dominic's out of Teddy makes sense, of course. Rascal exists, and Samira ain't gonna be doing damage to him. But the problem is he has a Thornmail already.
Yeah.
Like, you're gonna need every single possible armor penetration item, and unfortunately, the percentage variety do not stack.
Unfortunately not.
Yeah, which, you know, maybe there should be some leniency on that. If there's a Scion opposing you, maybe we should lift that, because sometimes it feels like it's necessary. As, all right, Carrier just BDD says a casual drive-by. Nope.
Yeah, maybe that's they add that to part of Scion's passive.
Allows
the whole enemy team gets better armor pen.
Yeah, nailed it.
Well, you know, Atlas, this is a semifinals and a spring season of LCK where people actually started bringing up the question of whether Damwon Kia might start to surpass T1's legacy, SK Telecom T1 that is. And it was becoming such an insane finals potentially, right? Everyone predicted, minus, of course, ㅣ, that we were going to have that T1 Damwon Kia finals where maybe a passing of the torch could even occur if Damwon won it, but T1 have to win now 3 games in a row in this best of 5 to even get us there, and they are falling behind. They cannot even control Baron right now with this poke composition.
Yep, we'll see whether they can rain something in there. Of course, Cannon needs to be in position and Faker as well, but now the re-engage comes forward. We've got a lot of buttons being pressed, and now maybe it's the opportunity for T1. But Clid goes golden right in the middle of it. You can see Ruler trying to do his best, but he's going to be taken down. The Baron helps him out. The Samira is dead, though, and now Gen G utilizing the more powerful wallets and just running at T1. That's a very short teleport. However,
short.
one that maybe Cuz not going to be able to. Yeah, you do get the extra movement speed from the teleport, but who was I kidding? It's Udyr. Once again, misjudging.
Even in the perfect team fight for T1 that you hope for, where you get the poke done, they already took damage from the Baron. They've been chipped down. You have the rail engage. Carrier comes through with a Magnet Storm, and even with the Magnet Storm, Teddy is not able to get that Inferno trigger cleanup. You don't get to see the amazing wipe. There's so much CC on the side of Gen G to interrupt him, and I believe it was actually Rascal with just a big, devastating smash that actually ends everything. Let's take a look at this fight once again. So look at the Gen G members. They're starting to get fairly low here. The Baron's being chipping. And look, you see the damage come through.
The was so good.
And Teddy comes in here after you see the Magnet Storm. But he's just not able to finish off any single member. He's just forever and ever stunned up here, and T1 don't have the damage to actually break through all the tankiness here. BDD free hitting, he's on the side here, has untouched in this team fight, sets up multiple stuns, and the turn is unreal. Gen G look to close this series out 3-0. It's not over yet, but they have a massive advantage.
Well, just enough mana to take the train. That's like when you're looking in your pocket and you've got some change and you're like, can I afford this train ticket? You know, like, have I got it? And he counts it and he's like, just about there, and nailed it.
That's like when you're, you know, the last, you can't get a taxi in Korea. Around midnight could be very difficult, you know.
Yep, or 10 p.m. these days.
Yeah, 10 p.m. these days. You look at your phone, you're like, wow, next train in 5 minutes. I think if I walk to the station right now, I could still go home tonight.
Yeah, exactly. And thankfully for Rascal, is certainly able to do it. Not so thankfully for T1. However, they did stop the Baron. They lost the fight. However, not a lot was gained outside of getting towards Soul Point. It's not the worst dragon to lose. No, next one is definitely that, but getting Gen G closer to that is definitely a problem. Okay. Hail Mary Baron time!
No vision here for Gen G. They have to push through. It's very difficult to use Gen G's comp here against this poke without vision. You can see how much damage you'll take.
Oh, it's a big teleport to come forward here as well, as Clid just says, I don't really mind about it being CC'd, but the Baron is turned away from Carrier, looking to try and get into position for this flank play.
They have to hard engage Gen G do, or they're going to lose this Baron.
He's outside of vision right now. Rascal getting chunked just a little bit. Clid down to half as well, as the Baron down to 2,000 health. Cuz is going to get stunned. Clid gets into the pit. Can he steal it away? The answer is no. He's just dead as T1 stop their damage. They take themselves to the Baron. Rascal flashes away. Very low health. Buzz's BDD. Faker is exploded. Faker takes control. And Gen G have to walk away from a lost fight.
That's a massive pick on a BDD as well. He got greedy. He was trying to get some Scar of the Weak value and maybe even a trading kill there, but it's not going to happen. And for the first time in these last 2 games for T1, their poke composition wins a team fight. It's all about vision control here. You can see the chip damage come through. Clid's at half health before he has to Ragnarok in, because if he doesn't, he cannot actually close the distance to the Baron to look for the 50-50. So he's, of course, immediately targeted down. Rascal's forced to flash over the wall. Look at where BDD goes. He actually does get slept before he hits the Scar of the Week, but Faker knew exactly where he was going. And the ultimate that comes back is not enough to kill him. You can see he can almost one-shot Faker at this stage in the game. But that was well played by T1. But this is the first of many victories T1 will need to take in order to take this game back. Now they need to wrestle back control of the vision on the map. Then you can look for potentially picks from Faker getting those trouble bubbles. This feels like this might be the turning point in this game, a potential comeback here in Game 3 that might lead to a comeback in this series.
Well, there's already a 3,000 Baron power play, and the more turrets they take, we've already spoken about this. It's so important to open the map for this composition. And now is their opportunity to do so. It's sort of like a 1-2 punch out of T1 with the composition that they have. They benefit so much from making the map dark.
Every time you're trying to walk down towards the middle of the map as Gen G, if you're having to dodge Trouble Bubbles and Paddle Stars, or you're eating those on your way towards the next Mountain Drake, for example, you're just going to be fighting half a team fight. You're going to be at half health before the fight even starts. And you can see Kana is really pushing the envelope here on the side lane, have the Baron minions. This is exactly how T1 need to play this, 4-1 it, and control that vision. Look at, there's not a single ward in this jungle here on the top side of the map because it's just simply impossible to get in there and clear that away right now, which means T1 can pick anybody who gets caught by Faker. And Faker's kind of hovering between both sides as he gets asleep. He might get a kill. He pops that Banshee's Veil.
Yeah, Banshee's Veil being down is important. This is a point in the game, actually, where Rascal is pretty happy to 1v1 against Kana. He's just so extraordinarily durable, especially now with Warmogs completed on top of his Thornmail. Just not a lot of damage or lethality Champion can actually do, despite the fact that he does have the Grudge available as well. Gen G, though, they are going to spot the fact that T1 decided to go bottom lane, and they're just going to cruise themselves up mid. See whether they can mitigate some of this pressure as Faker looks for the bubble under Ruler. Ruler just martially pushes away.
How is he here? There's pings coming up. Like, you can't let him push that hard. You're not getting that much done here. Like, Kana is just winning the game by himself right now. Genji have to rotate so far back now.
This is just dead. That's an inhibitor taken.
Like, yeah, and guess what? He has teleport too, so you're going to lose the Drake as well.
Oh
Genji,
no,
you've
this is
got to
on
respond.
Vision.
Genji!
They can stop this whenever they want. Bubble is just going to connect, and Rascal gets the bad news. Teleport out from Kana. Hasn't quite taken the inhibitor just yet, as that's the decimating smash. This is a big zoom out now, as you can see Clit trying to get away from Kana. The flash not quite enough. Meanwhile, on the other side of the fight, Faker is taken down by VOD, who's now desperately trying to get out of the way. Carrier goes golden, and Teddy gets stunned. Oh no, the scat of the week is a disaster, and now Ruler is bouncing over the fight. It's a triple kill so far, and Genji lost no one.
VOD just won the game for Genji. He's able to stun Teddy before he can use his Inferno trigger. Just as he hits his S rank, he's not able to pull it off, and he gets the kill onto Faker. At this stage in the game, you can one-shot a Zoe. BDD once again comes up big. A player we haven't talked about. You talk about the 4 kings of the LCK, and BDD has been one of the quiet ones this season, but he comes back big in this series, Atlas, and I think he might have just put them into the grand finals.
This is extraordinary. Genji now pushing on the Nexus turrets. Kana, the only man that can save it. Carrier up in a couple of seconds. Teddy in 5. Nexus turret number 1 goes down. Carrier desperately trying to be the hero, but the Nexus is exposed, and T1 have been 3-0'd by Genji.
Unbelievable turn of events here. Only one Korean analyst predicted Genji to go to the grand finals, but they stomp and destroy T1 in 3 very dominant games in 3 completely different playstyles. Games 1 and 2, slow tempo-based play to aggressive, and in Game 3 we play the more aggressive version of the Game 2 composition. T1 get ahead, but make a few small execution mistakes, and BDD is there to scoop it up once again. The compositions we saw from T1 tonight were so hard to execute. They put everything on the line in this series. They went down 0-2, but had no fear. They put Teddy on his 2nd career game of Samira with a poke composition, but the execution just wasn't there. There was too much CC, and Genji have done what almost no one predicted, and we have an amazing grand finals here. Genji, remember, coming off a win against Stamwon Kia in the last match. It doesn't get much more exciting than this. We talked about this is the season of upsets. You can never expect the expected in LCK 2021.
Well, I mean, I want to take you through a little bit of a journey as to why Genji wasn't our prediction for this one. 2016 summer, playoffs round 1, KT 3-0 them. 2017 spring, KT 3-0 them. Round 1, 2017 summer, SKT 3-0s them. T1 then 3-0s them again in the spring finals that you guys may remember from last year. Then they managed to find a 3-0 against Afrika in the first round of the playoffs, and then they get 3-2'd by DRX. These are their playoff performances over the last almost 5 years. Genji just haven't been able to get themselves together. This was decisive, this was intelligent, and it was patient from Genji. 3 things that we have not been able to say about this team in playoffs for a really long time.
And definitely not all in the same best of 5, that is for sure. As we just saw the replay of BDD scatter the weak, instantly executing Faker. Then you see the Alistar come in, pulverize Teddy. You see the follow-up scatter the weak there from BDD. He's unable to Inferno trigger, and it looked like that might have been another one of those fights where the T1 composition actually comes online. We finally get to see Inferno trigger value. Finally, Teddy gets to do something in this game. But Teddy is a poke champion player. He's the one who likes to do slow, sustained damage in the late game. Samira, not in his wheelhouse. Not to say he can't play it, but this is a little bit unusual for him. You would expect that T1 would be playing Gumayusi if they're going to run a comp like this, but that's not what they're playing anymore. Gumayusi's on the bench, Teddy's the main AD carry, and unfortunately, even with this risky draft, they're not able to pull out a W, and they had such a great lead in this game. It felt like maybe this series could really turn around, but Gen.G and BDD, they said no, and I cannot believe that that is the score of this series.
I mean, I can believe the score. I just can't believe the names, right? I think this is just extraordinary for Gen.G, and I think something that is going to be really, really important for this organization moving forward, because they've had this monkey on their back for so long. Not only playoffs being a real problem, but also the team of T1 in playoffs has also been a huge
They've
issue.
been unshackled, Gen.G have.
Now they've taken them all away, and they're coming into a final against a Damwon Kia that looked utterly unstoppable in their 3-0 performance against Humble Life Esports, but they probably should have, and it's a 3-0 that Gen.G are coming off as well, against a team that's arguably in better form at that point in time, despite what the standings say. This really is setting us up for a finals that is extraordinarily exciting, and I think far more difficult to predict now that Gen.G have showed us that they exist in a playoffs capacity as well, instead of just being the regular season gods.
I mean, if Gen.G are able to take out, we're going to take a look at our highlights, but just hear me out. If Gen.G are able to take out Damwon Kia in this finals, right? Damwon Kia is starting to eclipse SK Telecom T1's legacy, and that was one of the things we talked about in that Game 3 about, you know, how hyped the finals would have been if T1 made it. I think a lot of people really wanted that finals. Obviously, T1 fans are probably the biggest group of people in terms of LCK fans anywhere. But now, you know, we have this opportunity for Gen.G to not only unshackle themselves in terms of their defeat of T1, the team that has historically stopped them in these important playoffs, to take a 3-0 win in playoffs. Extremely good form for BDD finally this season. And if they're able to stop Damwon Kia, who are about to create a new Korean dynasty, I mean, this would be the best one you could ever get. I mean, Gen.G have had a few seasons where it looks like maybe they're going to take the season, but then fall short in playoffs, don't make it, fall short in the finals, you know, on one side of finals. If they can change the narrative this time, I think they're going to get a bunch of new fans. I really do believe it.
I think, and also the old fans are going to get the catharsis that they deserve as well.
They deserve it.
They've been sitting back, waiting for their team to play to the potential that they know that they have. Like, players like BDD, he's been good forever. He's super good. His debut match was amazing. But we don't necessarily see it in the high-pressure moments. I think Ruler has always been a player that's very, very good, and low-key, he just stomped this series. He did extraordinarily well.
And this is the moment right here where it felt like, okay, you know, Gen.G, they overextended, they got a little bit panicked about this Baron play. You know, you see Rascal has to flash over the wall, then you get the kill onto BDD here. Faker, that's the one time he won up BDD in this whole series.
And BDD also, one of the only times he makes a mechanical error, throwing the Scout of the Week in the wrong direction.
Yeah. And, I mean, this was just... Let's watch this last play. You can see the calls instantly go on to Samira as the bowl, he actually hits it, and immediately everyone just starts screaming Samira.
Getting that triple, of course, BDD finishes off Faker at the very beginning of the fight. I do have some gripes, though. I think that the T1 drafting this series, much like their last one, despite the result, also not super strong. I think Samira Rel, imagine if that was Ezreal Braum.
Yeah, I mean,
amazing draft. I actually would love it.
Yeah,
just not so much.
I was definitely feeling that. I mean, you and I think, mind linked when we started talking about the Ezreal that wasn't banned there in the end.
It's sort of like, you sort of understand the theory, right? It's like, we need to push our advantages early. We've been an earlier team throughout the season, so maybe that's going to be our way and we can have some extra control. But when you're looking over at Ruler with his Kalista, it just makes it so much more difficult.
Look at how happy they are, Atlas. I mean, they have really shaken...
It feels like there is a lot of relief in the Gen.G house.
They have shaken off the T1 curse, you know, so to speak. I mean, is it a real curse? Hard to say. They beat them in Worlds qualifiers, but otherwise in best of 5 series, Gen.G has not looked dominant against them. And Gen.G, the comms in that last one were great. BDD communicating so well, so quickly. He's becoming a real leader for this team, I feel, in a lot of ways. He shows so much experience. And in this game, he was the one who made every single pivotal play. Across all 3 games, almost every single decisive moment was because he stepped forward or he flashed forward, hit the CC, and the team followed through on his call. They trust him, and you can really see it. You could see it in the comms, you could see it in the gameplay. And BDD versus Showmaker becomes such an incredible finals matchup now that I am very excited to watch.
It's really interesting as well because Clid played extraordinarily well into Cuz in the jungle, but he's now up against Canyon, right? Like, is it going to be as possible to be able to make those gaps? Like, Ghost is also one of our Kalista players. Like, the matchup does differ greatly. The drafting's going to be very different, and Gen G, they can sometimes get stuck in their ways with their drafts. This time, absolutely not punished, and I think that Gen G demonstrated a lot of different win conditions that will be very valuable into Damwon. But Damwon Kia are a very different beast.
Yeah. Also, I feel like one thing I will say about Gen G's drafting in this series is they responded to 3 drafts. They didn't actually try to take the high road and say, no, this is exactly what we're going to do. It wasn't very obvious drafting. It wasn't very predictable. It was like, oh, T1, you're trying to draft like this. I'm going to respond the same way I did in Game 2 in Game 3.
Yeah, well, let's go to the analyst desk and see what they thought about this Gen G miraculous 3-0 victory.
Thank you very much, guys. And Gen G was able to pick up a very clean 3-0 victory in the second round of the playoff, and now they're heading into the finals next week. T1 in game number 3 tried to play around the top side. They adjusted their strategy. We had same Jace and Zoe, but the difference was that first pick Udyr. So Udyr, a very strong early game pick, and Jace, Zoe, a very strong poke comp, but they were not trying to find a theme for their comp. They were instead just looking for some early game strong picks, for example, like Jace and Zoe. And then Symria doesn't really find the synergy with a poke comp, but she definitely was able to find a really nice lane partner, Rel. And we had some back-to-back moments in this game, but still Gen G was able to come out victoriously. And I think both teams were able to draft a very decent comp, but Gen G usually was able to find a very stable comp, but this time around, Ruler was able to get enabled thanks to the front line that he had. Udyr full cleared in the first path, and you know, you cannot really run away from his gank. That was not the main case in the LCK, but LPL we always saw the Udyr just clearing the full camps and then ganking lanes, but Clid actually read this like a book, so he was right there in order to protect his teammate. So Gen G was able to stop T1's snowball. Speaking of the topside play, let's take a look at the highlight where T1 wanted to play around the topside objectives, where Gen G really wanted to start to interrupt T1's setup. We had an accident breaking out on the mid lane. I do understand their decision making. Gen G did win the first Drake. However, Zoe got too greedy. She just walks under Syndra's turret and gets solo killed. That was not about, you know, taking trades. Faker was looking for a solo kill, but miraculous turnaround from BDD was there to punish them overstepping. A lot of people actually mentioned that Syndra isn't that OP these days because all she can do is to scatter the weak, but after the nerf of the MR items, actually Syndra is slowly gaining her power back, and at the same time, that was also another very odd play coming out from Udyr with that Herald Unleash. Zoe had 2 options over there. Zoe could keep exerting pressure on the mid lane or rotate to the other lanes, but with that solo kill coming out from Syndra, T1 was not able to take any answers, and they had to waste their Herald as well. Now let's take a look at the second highlight, where this one team fight decided the finalist of the LCK's 2021 Spring Split. It was a very complicated situation. Actually, Clid was right there in order to stop Jace. Gen G was aware that the side pressure coming out from Jace was too strong, So Jace escaped the scene with a TP on that lane, but Jace took a TP onto the bottom lane. However, Clid was trying to body block him as hard as it could possibly do, and then BDD finds a massive CC onto Faker. He exactly lands that Scatter the Weak on the Porter jump of Zoe. And then later on, another Scatter the Weak was targeted on that Samira. So Samira was not able to pull any trigger in this game, to be completely honest. After Zoe gets eliminated like that, you only need to focus on Samira. And there were too many CCs on the side of Genji in order to interrupt her style ultimate. I think today in general, Genji was not having any hard time at all. It was a smooth sailing series for Genji, and they are heading to the finals. And the player of the game will be BDD on Syndra. BDD got 1 solo kill, and he was participating almost every action that Genji was pulling off. It was a hyper carry of a single player, and Syndra was right there in order to bring his team to a victory. And it's been a while since we saw Syndra playing this aggressively. Syndra is one of the go-to picks here in this LCK, and some of the teams, they actually waste their Scatter the Weak just to, in order to, you know, move back to a safer spot. But BDD, I think he had a massive CC score in this game, and he was the only one who was having the control of this game. Not many mid laners can flash forward and also survive. And slowly ramping up his vote numbers is BDD, and now he's gonna get the 9 out of 9 votes for this BDD. I think he was the unstoppable mid laner in this game. The solo POG will be joining us for the POG interview. Congratulations on your win, BDD. Hello, thank you. Very wide angle for just you, BDD. The only one to join this POG interview. Congratulations on moving on to the finals. It's another chance for you to win the LCK title. How are you feeling? I didn't expect that it's gonna be a 3-0 win, but I'm so glad that we got a very clean sweep. What was your prediction then? Maybe 3-1? In fact, I also want to ask you about the prediction from the experts. You know, everyone except ㅣ predicted that T1 will win. You know, what did you feel after seeing the prediction coming up? Yeah, I saw that, and I could totally understand because we got 2-0'd by T1 in the second round robin. So I do understand that, you know, people could predict that way, but still, I wasn't too happy about it. Moving on, today, I think, looking at the directions of Genji had today, I think you guys prepared the draft really well. Especially you guys kind of tried to play something new on the bottom lane. You guys this time around played a very late game comp. I think Genji played out the comp really well based on the plans that you guys had, right? I think, yeah, we were able to play as we prepared and planned. And T1 had a very squishy comp, which means our comp can exert more dominance. Especially in game, I think today you were super calm, you were so chill, and you were making the right decision every time. Is that because you guys were able to watch the previous matches and prepare? Well, we did watch other games, but whenever we play up against T1, we always get in rush, you know? We always, you know, get over eager, so we always... So this time around, we really wanted to stay calm and collected up against T1. And VDD, there was this moment where you flashed in order to take the pedal star to save Lid. And Life also mentioned in a previous interview that the team bonding is growing stronger and stronger. Do you really kind of realize you guys are becoming even a more of a solid team? I think we are all in a very similar age group, so we always have a really nice conversation with each other. But it's really similar to usual. We always trust each other, and as we've been playing with this roster for a full year last year, so the more we play together, I think the more we kind of trust each other, and the bigger the synergy gets. And today, Genji was smooth sailing today up against T1, but there was one risky moment when you guys got your Baron stolen, or maybe T1 walked away with a Baron. T1, the opponents went for a very risky Baron try, so we should have been more, you know, cautious about heading into and rotating into that Baron area, but we were in a rush, so that was our mistake. But still, after that, we were able to still stay calm and go slow. And BDD, I think you had a phenomenal series. I think this was your best performance in your entire career. You're the solo POG. How are you able to pop off like this today? Well, I think our comp kind of enabled me to, you know, hyper carry, and I woke up this morning feeling super fresh, so I was able to do a decent work. Usually, Gorilla, when BDD was his teammate, there were some moments where BDD said, I had some good sleep, and he always carried the game. And BDD, how would you like to rate your own performance today? Not now. I don't want to get ahead of myself. I will answer that question after I win the title. And Genji didn't really had a lot of chance to win the LCK title. However, we can call it the regional qualifier for the MSI, and you know, Genji, about the regional qualifier, you know what happens? I mean, during the practice, I mean, we always had some great results in the scrims, but these days, I think we are even getting better, so I think we can play well at the finals. This is a very significant match, and you know, coming up next week, it's gonna be a decider for the MSI participant as well. What's your feeling about the finals? Do you think you guys can win? I don't want to get ahead of myself, but we're confident up against Hamon Kia. I think 60%, you know? More than 50, looks super confident to BDD. Your next match, the grand finals, will be next Saturday, April 10th. What's your mindset and determination of that series? We have a bit of a time left to prepare, so we will work really hard in order to showcase better performance. Thank you for all your love and support. Once again, congratulations on your win, and I'll see you at the finals. And this will be the end of the interview from BDD, and I'm going to pass it back to our casters. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jisun, as per usual, for the translation of not only the analyst desk, but the interview with BDD as well. I'm glad that he's not getting ahead of himself, because obviously the true test is going to be Damwon Kia in that final on Saturday. But let's see what has been chosen for play of the day.
Which BDD play is it going to be?
I was going to say it. I think it has to be the My Heart Will Go On moment, though, right? It's got to be.
It could be.
I think so. I think maybe it's a bit delayed. So we are just. I think my money is definitely on the flash in front of the paddle star.
I think that might be it. I think the other one could be the kill on the Cuz.
All true.
Alternatively, the kill on Faker in the mid lane, but well,
or maybe we've cancelled it. I don't know. Let's have a look at our final bracket. Of course, Damwon Kia waiting in the final after their 3-0, but Gen G one-upping them, grabbing a 3-0 of their own to join them here from their second place.
Look at the divide that we had this season in terms of the #1 seed and #2 seed. The first two series actually much closer than we expected. Hanwha Esports narrowly taken over Nongshim. You see the 3-1 T1 versus DRX. But then in our semifinals, it was dominance for both Seed 1 and Seed 2. So it is going to be a very exciting finals. It will be on Saturday. So mark your calendars, Saturday, 5 p.m. our normal starting time. And it is going to be a good one. Hopefully, it will deliver. And yeah, Gen G have an opportunity once again to dethrone Damwon in a grand finals. It is going to be sick. Here's our challenger schedule, meanwhile.
Yeah, exactly. We've got the Challengers finals as well. Unfortunately, Damwon not quite so lucky as far as their academy team is concerned, but some definitely familiar organizations.
Yeah. Otherwise, it's our top four.
Yeah, exactly. We're just like, we've omitted Damwon. Maybe they've just gone up too high, so we can't actually see them on the standings anymore, and therefore that has affected their academy roster as well. Not sure whether that's ever going to work out. However, certainly going to be fun, as Play of the Day is finally ready. As it's not, it's actually VOD getting the counter kill.
Yep. Sky of the Week instantly unlocked. BD crab raves as the ultimate goes off. BDDing, as what it says. There's been a lot of names that I can't say on broadcast that people have given him after today, or what BDD stands for. You know,
I think my favorite so far has been biggest draft difference.
Yep, biggest draft difference.
That's definitely a good one.
I mean, look, T1 had very complicated drafts. I don't think they were terrible by any means, but Gen G just knew how to shut them down every time. Their reactionary drafting was super cool. They won't be able to draft like that against Damwon Kia because they open up. Like, you can't even actually put a flow chart on how Damwon Kia drafts work because there's so many branches and paths, but I'm very excited for that grand finals and how it's going to go.
Me too. I think that the drafting is definitely going to be very different. Certainly something that we will have to watch out for, but that is going to be on Saturday. It is about 6 days' time, and Gen G and Damwon both going to be preparing extraordinarily hard to try and get that spot into MSI, because proving themselves internationally yet again is going to be absolutely huge for both of these squads. Damwon want to continue the winning. Gen G want to start the winning all over again. It's been so long. 2017? My goodness, there's people that have completely forgotten that even happened. So it's about time that Gen G gets some more value. That will do it for us for tonight, though. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you on Saturday for the final.
그러면 룰일사는 하기 싫다?
나이스! 나이스!
오랜만에 하이파이브 할까요? 병서랑 잠깐만.
잘했다.